I never saw it coming. One night, our house felt colder, like a storm creeping in unseen. A single text on her phone, someone else's name, shook my world and stole my pride. I confronted her by the pool where we once laughed at each other's jokes, the water's reflection mocking my shattered trust. Now all I heard was the thunder of my own heartbeat and the hush of betrayal. She pleaded, tears shining like broken glass, but I was already drowning in anger. I never believed I could become this man-angry, desperate, and on the brink of losing everything. I'd always told people my life was good, quiet maybe, but good. My name is Ethan Parker, and if you'd asked me a few months ago how I felt about my marriage, I would have said, happy. I had a house in a decent neighborhood, a steady consulting business, and a teenage daughter, Sophia, who made me proud on most days. My wife, Charlotte, worked full-time at a mid-sized financial firm in town, and between the two of us, we'd set up a life that people from the outside viewed as picture-perfect. Sometimes I looked out the living room window, at the lawn and the suburban street, and thought, we've done well. Charlotte and I first met at a mutual friends party nearly 2 decades ago. I'd been fresh out of grad school, uncertain about my future, but I'd quickly landed a small role in a local tech firm. She was a newly minted MBA, bright-eyed and ready to conquer the financial world. We clicked over cheap wine and conversation about travel. Her laugh, high and confident, pulled me in. We dated for 2 years, then got married in a little ceremony at an old bed-and breakfast. I still remember the morning sunlight filtering across her veil as she walked down the aisle. I can recall how my heart thumped with excitement, because I knew, deep down, she was exactly what I needed. Ambitious, intelligent, and always planning for tomorrow. We eventually settled in a comfortable suburb and had Sophia. Things moved in a predictable pattern. Charlotte climbed her corporate ladder. I started my small consulting firm. Early on, there were evenings we'd both be so exhausted from building our careers that we'd pass out on the couch by 9 p.m., but we kept at it, supporting each other however we could. Charlotte was the more driven one, always reading spreadsheets or scheduling conferences. I was the laid-back partner, more willing to cook dinner and help Sophia with her homework. We balanced each other, but lately there had been something unsettling in the house, like a faint, constant hum you only notice once you pause everything else. Charlotte had started traveling more. At first, it was once a month, some conference in Chicago, a client meeting in Denver. Then it turned into bi-weekly visits, sometimes even shorter trips with almost no explanation. I'll be gone for a night or two, Ethan. Can you make sure Sophia gets to her soccer practice? Of course, I'd say yes. That's the natural reflex of a supportive partner. But I began to see the stress in her eyes, or maybe the excitement that flickered there. I wasn't sure which. Subtle changes in her behavior gnawed at me. She became guarded with her phone. I'd find her texting in the kitchen late at night. Screen brightness turned down. Sometimes she'd be on a call, speaking in hushed tones, and if I walked in, she'd quickly hang up or pretend it was just a routine conversation about budgets. I tried to rationalize. She's under a lot of pressure at work. She wants to be partner someday. And that might have been true, but my gut refused to settle. One Friday night, a few weeks before the story truly begins, I woke up around 3 a.m. with an odd feeling, the kind that drags you from bed by the collar. As I left the bedroom, I noticed Charlotte's side of the bed was empty. I found her downstairs in our dimly lit living room, hunched over her phone. When she noticed my silhouette, she snapped upright like a guilty kid. She mumbled something about an important client call. I nodded, half asleep, but as we climbed back upstairs, I noticed her phone was still unlocked in her hand, face turned away from me. That was the moment I realized I should trust my instincts. Still, I said nothing. I suppose I believed we were merely going through a rough patch. I told myself that every marriage has its lumps. But there was something else, a creeping sense that Charlotte had begun living a second life, one where I barely existed except to remind her there was a home to return to. It didn't help that I was busy too. My consulting firm was in the middle of a big contract with a medical software company. The hours were long and the mental load heavier than usual. Between phone calls, Zoom meetings, and client site visits, I was ignoring that unsettling hum at home. Sometimes, ignoring a problem is easier than naming it, because once you name it, you have to deal with it. The only bright spot during those uneasy weeks was Sophia. She was 19, in her junior year at Vanderbilt. living on campus with her two best friends, Naomi West and Chelsea Davis. Even though she mostly stayed in the dorm, she'd often drop by on weekends, rummage through the fridge or plop down on the couch for a chat. She confided in me more than in her mother these days, complaining about a tough organic chemistry lab or gushing about the track meets Naomi won. I was grateful. She's always been close to me, maybe because Charlotte's job kept her away from home more often. I never questioned it. I just enjoyed my time with my daughter. One afternoon, Sophia brought up a plan for a big pool party to celebrate the close of the summer session. Her friends from college would come to the house for a barbecue and a day of swimming. Normally, I would have teased her about needing me to grill burgers and keep watch, but I was actually excited to do it. The house needed a dose of laughter, and maybe I did too. I texted Charlotte, letting her know about the party. She texted back a curt, "Sure, have fun. I'll be out of town, but should be back that night." No exclamation points, no sign of interest. Just the typical dryness that had begun to invade our marriage. Strange how a short message could feel so sharp. I exhaled and decided to keep my doubts buried. It's a busy quarter for her, I told myself. She'll come around, but I felt that hum again, louder this time. It was the feeling you get when you know a storm is brewing just over the horizon. By the time the party day rolled around, I'd done all the typical dad prep tasks. I checked the pool filter, bought fresh charcoal for the grill, stocked the fridge with sodas and fruit juices, and all the while I kept an eye on my phone, half expecting Charlotte to call or text with a last-minute flight delay. Instead, I got radio silence, which somehow bothered me more. When Sophia arrived that morning, Naomi and Chelsea in tow, I saw how grown-up they all seemed. Naomi, tall and athletic, gave me a playful salute, recalling the days I'd jog with her before her track meets. Chelsea teased me about needing my phone number as her private bodyguard. It was the usual banter, but I sensed they were picking up on my subdued mood. Naomi even asked if I was doing okay, something about the tension in my face. I just smiled and brushed it off, telling her I'd had a late night finishing up a work proposal. No point in worrying them. The plan was for around a dozen kids to show up, mostly Sophia's classmates. As the day wore on, I retreated inside to give them space, though I'd pop out to the yard occasionally, checking the grill or offering fresh towels. The girls had set up music, laid out snacks, and were laughing about some inside jokes I barely understood. For a while, it was the lively home I remembered from years ago. Noise, laughter, splashes in the pool, the shrill excitement of youth. Charlotte, meanwhile, was nowhere to be found. She was supposed to land around noon, but my phone stayed dark. I tried not to let that ruin my mood. Looking around, I couldn't help but reflect. If you didn't know any better, you'd think we were a happy suburban family hosting a perfect summer party. I felt a bittersweet pang in my chest. Is it so hard to be satisfied with this? I wondered. And I couldn't stop my mind from drifting back to those nights Charlotte was out of bed, down in the living room with her phone, that screen angled away. The day's events were about to lead me into a confrontation that changed everything. But at that moment, I still believed or wanted to believe that Charlotte and I could mend whatever had broken. I had no idea I was on the cusp of discovering more than I'd ever wanted to know. That's the trouble with illusions. They keep you comfortable right until the moment they shatter. And once they do, you can't look at the pieces without cutting yourself on every edge. The next day would slash me open, but for now, I was just a man standing at the sliding glass door, watching a pool party with forced calm, unable to shake the feeling that my entire life was about to change. It was around 10 in the morning when I carried out a tray of fresh fruit and snacks, half listening to the cheerful pop music blasting from Sophia's portable speaker. The day was bright, borderline hot, with a gentle breeze occasionally rippling the surface of the pool. Naomi and Chelsea were setting up extra folding chairs. Each time they stepped away, the shadows of the big oak tree danced across the deck, reminding me how serene our backyard could look on a summer day. The smell of cut grass and sunscreen floated through the air. Sophia bounded over to me, wearing an excited grin that reminded me of when she was 8 and I'd bought her a new bicycle. "Dad, you have to try the fruit punch. Naomi found this cool recipe online. It's got mint and strawberries." Her enthusiasm was contagious. "Sure," I said, giving her a half smile. But not until I finished marinating the chicken wings. Priorities, kiddo. She laughed and ran back to her friends, calling over her shoulder, "We'll handle the punch, you handle the protein." I glanced around, scanning the yard with a sense of satisfaction. The patio was spotless. I'd wiped down the wooden chairs, and the pool water gleamed. I wanted everything perfect for Sophia's friends. A little piece of me wished Charlotte were there to see it. She used to love hosting events, from simple dinners to holiday parties, always perfecting every detail. But lately, her schedule had pulled her away from that side of life, our side. Heading back into the kitchen, I retrieved the chicken wings from the fridge and placed them into a large bowl of marinade I'd thrown together earlier. Soy sauce, garlic, ginger, a bit of honey. As I stirred, I couldn't help noticing the emptiness of the house behind me, some faint echo of Charlotte's absence. I shook off the uneasy thought. Focus on the moment. Out in the living room, the phone rang. I instinctively wiped my hands on a dish towel and hurried to grab it, a flicker of hope that maybe it was Charlotte calling about her flight. Instead, the caller ID showed unknown. I let it ring one more time, then answered, "Ethan Parker here?" A crackling pause. Then a muffled, chuckling voice. "You all set for a big day, Mr. Parker?" The male voice was vaguely familiar, but it had a sarcastic edge I couldn't place. "Excuse me, who is this?" He let out a low laugh. "Just making sure you're prepared." I frowned. "I'm not interested in solicitations," I said, my tone firm, and hung up. The moment I did, my heart pounded a bit. Why did that call feel so off? For a second, I thought of Tyler, though I'd only ever heard about him tangentially through Charlotte, who mentioned that her boss, Alexander Creed, had a son in college. But I dismissed the possibility. I shook off the chill in my spine and returned to the backyard. Some of Sophia's friends had arrived early, a couple of guys from her biology study group, plus one or two classmates from her psychology course. They greeted me politely, depositing extra soda cans onto the table. "Everything's looking great, Mr. Parker," one said, adjusting his sunglasses. I recognized him as Trevor, a lanky kid I'd seen last Thanksgiving at the house. I nodded and forced a friendly grin. "Help yourselves to snacks, and watch that grill if the flame flares up while I'm in the house." As more guests trickled in, the chatter grew. Soon I counted about 12 of them. Some changed into swimsuits right away, while others lounged in the deck chairs. Naomi was perched on the diving board, talking animatedly with Chelsea, who hung on every word like they were discussing top-secret plans. The scene had that vibrant energy, youthful, carefree. I felt an odd pang, remembering that once Charlotte and I were that excited about everything. Sophia was busy mixing a big bowl of fruit punch. She'd wave me over every few minutes. "Dad, is this too sweet?" Or, "Dad, can you pass me the spoon?" I teased her, saying she was one step away from becoming a bartender. She rolled her eyes, good-naturedly. By noon, the party was in full swing. Music thumped against the glass doors. The sun glinted off the water, and I found myself enjoying the moment. I retreated into the house for a bit, not wanting to hover. I wasn't some weird, overbearing father. I just wanted to keep an eye on them without overshadowing their fun. From the kitchen window, I could see them occasionally glancing over, but nobody seemed bothered by my presence. The day drifted on, the smell of grilled chicken filling the air. People cheered as they hopped into the pool, splashing each other. Others stacked up plates with chips and watermelon slices. I was losing track of how many times I refilled the iced tea jug, but it felt nice, like normalcy. At around 2 p.m., I decided to take a quick break. I stepped indoors, turning on the TV in the living room to catch a baseball score. The chatter from outside faded behind the sliding glass door. Then, the doorbell rang. I hesitated. Who could that be? Everyone invited was out back, so either it was someone who was late or a random visitor. Maybe a delivery, I thought, setting aside the remote. I moved through the hallway, half distracted. But then I heard commotion from the backyard, a mixture of shouts and shrill voices. My stomach knotted. "Dad!" I heard Sophia call. "Dad, come out here! Hurry!" Without another thought, I sprinted back through the living room, sliding the door open so fast it almost rattled off its track. The sight that greeted me stopped me cold. A tall, broad-shouldered guy gripping Chelsea Davis by the wrist, pulling her toward the gate that led to our driveway. Naomi and two others tried to intervene, but he shoved them aside as if they weighed nothing. For a second, my brain churned with confusion. Then I recognized him from a photo Charlotte once showed me of her boss's son, Tyler Creed. Chelsea's face was twisted in pain. She tried to yank free, but Tyler had the upper hand. "Hey, let me go!" she screamed. Sophia and Naomi both lunged at him. He easily shrugged them off, nearly sending Naomi sprawling. That was the flashpoint. Every protective instinct in me erupted. "Hey!" I hollered, my voice echoing off the fence. "Get your hands off her!" Tyler turned, lips curled in a sneer. He wore a tank top that showed off muscular arms. "Back off, old man," he said. "This is none of your business." He took another step toward the gate, dragging Chelsea along. She was resisting, but she wasn't strong enough to break free. The other kids circled around, fear evident on their faces. Everything turned chaotic, shouting, the thrum of the music still going in the background, water dripping from swimsuits, an oddly surreal backdrop to an ugly moment. I'd never been the type to jump into a brawl, but it was as if time slowed, my heartbeat surging in my ears. I sprinted forward, sliding between Tyler and the gate so he'd have to stop or face me head on. Up close, he loomed at least 6 inches taller than me, with biceps that looked like they spent hours in a weight room. I said low and calm, "Let her go, now." His lips twisted into a grin. "You really think you can make me?" "I don't think," I replied, remembering the dusty nights at my old martial arts studio. "I know." He swung a punch before I even finished speaking. I dodged, feeling the whoosh of air near my cheek. That's all it took. Instinct kicked in. My right hand shot forward, landing a precise strike at his solar plexus. The air whooshed out of him. He released Chelsea's wrist, staggering back. There was a collective gasp. The music still pounded, incongruously cheerful. Tyler's face contorted in pain, surprise blazing in his eyes. He lunged again, cursing. This time, he aimed a wild hook toward my temple. I stepped under it, driving my shoulder into his ribs. He toppled onto the grass, choking on an expletive. From behind me, Naomi grabbed Chelsea, pulling her away. The tension in the air felt electric. Tyler scrambled to his feet, panting, face red. For a moment, I expected him to back down. Instead, he spat, "You're gonna regret that," and tried to tackle me. He telegraphed every move, and I used his momentum to flip him onto his back. I knelt, pressing a forearm into his chest. "Stay down," I growled, a subtle quake in my voice because adrenaline was surging. My entire body thrummed with anger, protectiveness, and the knowledge this wasn't some random intruder, it was Tyler Creed, Alexander Creed's son. Some of the kids were filming on their phones, others stared, open-mouthed. Sophia ran over to me, breathless. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, locking eyes with Tyler. He glared back, hatred radiating. He coughed, tried to speak, and then managed to sneer. "Little man's got fight in him. Guess you take after your little wife." My blood turned to ice. "What did you say?" He laughed, though it sounded forced. "Nothing. I just thought you'd know where my dad's been spending all his time, or who he's been spending it with." Rage and confusion twisted inside me, but I kept my composure. I pressed him down harder. "You're trespassing. You attacked Chelsea. You're not leaving until the police arrive." He smirked, coughed again, and spat grass out of his mouth. "We'll see about that." We all heard the squeal of tires from the driveway as a car pulled up. An older friend or some accomplice, maybe. Tyler jerked free at that moment, scrambling to his feet, backing toward the gate. "I'll be seeing you, old man, and your dear wife." Before I could grab him again, he slipped through the gate, leaving behind a yard of stunned onlookers. In the hush that followed, I turned to Chelsea, who cradled her wrist. "Are you hurt?" Her eyes watered, but she shook her head. "It's sore, but I'm okay." Naomi gently led her to a chair. The rest of the kids crowded around. Some were shaking. Others stared at me like they'd just witnessed something impossible. My heart pounded, but I kept calm, scanning the yard for any clue about who Tyler came with. No sign. And in that tense hush, I remembered his words. "You take after your little wife, and you'd know where my dad's been spending all his time." Something about the way he said it made my stomach turn with dread. The party atmosphere shattered the moment Tyler Creed fled, leaving behind swirling questions and shaky teens. Someone cut the music. In the silence, I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. My phone was in my hand, though I couldn't recall grabbing it. Part of me wanted to call the police immediately, but the other part hesitated, worried about the consequences. Tyler had threatened something seeing me and my dear wife. I didn't even want to guess what that implied. Sophia hovered at my elbow, trembling. "Dad, I've never seen you fight like that. How did you—" I forced a thin smile. "Remember? I used to practice martial arts when you were little. I never thought I'd need to use it like this." She nodded, eyes wide, clearly still shaken. Behind her, Naomi helped Chelsea cradle her wrist with a bag of ice. A handful of the other kids whispered among themselves, uncertain if they should stay or leave. I cleared my throat, pulling my thoughts together. "Everyone, listen up. You're safe now. Tyler's gone. But if any of you have footage of this, I want you to keep it off social media for the moment. Let's handle this carefully." A few phones were lowered. One young woman with short red hair, Serena, maybe frowned. "Mr. Parker, are you going to call the cops?" I exhaled, glancing at Chelsea's pained expression. "Yes, I think I should. He attacked Chelsea. I can't let that go." A quiet hush settled. It was as if no one wanted to be the first to break the tension. Finally, Naomi murmured, "Chelsea, do you want to go to the hospital?" Chelsea shook her head stubbornly. "I'm okay. Just She winced, testing her wrist. "Hurts, but not broken. I'll be fine. He just yanked me really hard." Sophia ran inside the house to grab bandages and rubbing alcohol, rummaging through the first aid kit, while I called the non-emergency police line. I explained the situation, making sure to emphasize Tyler's aggression. The dispatcher said an officer would come by shortly. I looked around the backyard again, at the scattered cups, the half-eaten food, the party that had derailed in an instant. "Naomi, can you help me move everyone inside for a bit? Just until the officer arrives." She nodded, taking charge as if it were second nature. Her leadership reminded me of Charlotte in her younger days, always calmly directing people in a crisis. The memory jabbed at me. I checked my phone, scanning for a message from Charlotte. Nothing. In about 20 minutes, a patrol car parked out front. Officer Delgado, a lean, stern-looking woman, stepped into our living room. I filled her in, explaining how Tyler showed up, tried to force Chelsea to leave, and then got into a fight with me. The kids all nodded along, interjecting details about Tyler's attitude and the way he'd shoved them. Chelsea showed her bruised wrist. Officer Delgado sighed. "I can file a report. It's definitely assault. The question is, do you want to press charges?" Chelsea looked uncertain. "I don't want to blow it up," she mumbled. "He's got a temper, but Her father, Michael Davis, was still out of town on a business trip, so she was technically relying on me and Naomi's parents. I gently squeezed Chelsea's shoulder. "He can't get away with attacking you. Let's at least get a record of it." She gulped and nodded. "Okay, let's do it." I helped Officer Delgado gather everyone's statements. Then came the standard procedure. She asked me about my knowledge of Tyler Creed, if I'd known him personally before, if I had any idea why he'd specifically targeted Chelsea. All I could offer was speculation. Maybe Tyler had asked her out and gotten rejected, or maybe he just showed up because he knew she'd be here. When the officer left, the group was subdued, no one sure if they should stay and try to salvage the party. I noticed a couple of them discreetly packing up. Sophia saw me glance around and offered a weak half-smile. "Dad, I think the party's basically over. Should we just call it a day?" I nodded, feeling disappointment tug at me. "Yeah, let's do that. Safety first." It took only a few minutes for them to gather their bags and leftover food. Some offered me apologetic hugs and thanks. They probably felt guilty that things ended so badly. Chelsea's mother arrived after Officer Delgado called her. I told her I'd give any support necessary. She offered me a grateful smile, though she looked shaken. As the last car pulled away, the backyard returned to its still, sun-baked state. I stood on the deck, alone with Sophia, looking out at the pool water, which now seemed oddly calm. My heart still thrummed from the adrenaline, and Tyler's words kept repeating in my head, "You'd know where my dad's been spending all his time." I wondered if he was just talking trash, but something about it rang too specific, too personal. Tyler's father was Alexander Creed, Charlotte's boss. What if Tyler was implying something about Charlotte and Alexander? My gut churned, recalling all those suspicious business trips. I tried to push the thought away, but it lingered like a toxin. Sophia broke the silence. "Dad, do you think Tyler was referring to Mom somehow?" Her voice sounded so small that it broke me. I reached out and put an arm around her. "I don't know. It could be just him being an idiot trying to scare me." I forced myself to smile, though I was sure it looked grim. "Don't worry about it, okay?" She nodded, but I saw the uncertainty in her eyes. We spent the next hour cleaning up the remains of the party. I stacked the chairs, took down the decorations, and unplugged the speaker. Meanwhile, Sophia gathered empty cups and plates, her expression distant. After we finished, I squeezed her shoulder. "Why don't you head back to campus early, kiddo? There's not much left to do here. I'll handle the rest." She hesitated, then admitted, "I have a study group tonight anyway." Leaning in, she gave me a heartfelt hug. "Dad, thanks for protecting Chelsea. I'm sorry everything got so weird." I shook my head. "Not your fault, Soph. Go on, text me when you get there." By the time she left, the house felt impossibly quiet. The sun was setting outside, painting the sky in a warm orange. I collapsed onto the living room couch, my mind replaying the day's chaos. Tyler's aggression, the scuffle, the final threat. A sick feeling spread in my gut. If he was telling the truth, if there was some involvement between Charlotte and Alexander Creed, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I snapped upright, half expecting Charlotte, but it was an unknown number again. "Heart pounding," I answered. No immediate response. I almost hung up, but then I heard a scoffing sound. "Nice moves, Parker," a voice said low. "Real tough guy. But you better watch your step. Next time it won't be so easy." "Tyler," I breathed, shock and anger flaring. "You listen." He cut me off with a bitter laugh. "You want to come at me again, old man? Go ahead. I'll be sure to bring friends. Then maybe you'll want to ask your wife how she likes bigger men than you." Rage turned my hands to fists. "Don't talk about Charlotte," I snapped. "Oh, but she's already deep in it. I know plenty. Keep poking around. Or don't. You'll find out sooner or later anyway." With that, the line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, adrenaline swirling once more. My world felt jolted out of orbit. Tyler was referencing Charlotte specifically. I scrolled through the contact log, ready to call her. But something inside me whispered, she might lie if something's really going on. Instead, I texted her, "Hey, how was your flight? Text me when you land." No response. Outside, the sky turned darker, a shade of blue that reminded me of bruises. I watched it, thinking about how swiftly a calm day can collapse into violence. I replayed Tyler's final comment. "Then maybe you'll want to ask your wife how she likes bigger men." At that moment, I realized there was a fundamental crack in my marriage I couldn't ignore. Something about Charlotte's frequent trips, about her dismissive attitude. The old reassurance I once had about us was gone, replaced by a biting fear. I closed my eyes, leaning back into the couch. The house was silent, the air thick with dread. Tyler's phone call reverberated in my head, and I had the sinking feeling this was only the beginning. Charlotte arrived the next day in the late morning after texting me only once to say her flight was delayed. She walked into the house with a wheeled carry-on and her laptop bag, wearing that tailored blazer she loved, sharp lines that made her look every inch the corporate executive. I was seated at the kitchen island sipping black coffee, mind still on the previous day's events. The moment she spotted my tense stance, she raised an eyebrow. "You're up early, Ethan," she said, her voice carrying a brittle edge. "Everything okay?" I took a slow breath. "We had an incident at the pool party yesterday." Her expression flickered with something like alarm, then annoyance. She set down her luggage and rubbed her forehead. "Great. I knew letting a bunch of college kids invade the backyard could be risky. Did someone break something?" I stared at her, a hollow feeling in my chest. "Not exactly. One of your boss's relatives showed up and attacked Chelsea. Tyler Creed. She flinched at the name. Tyler, that can't be. She broke off, her gaze darting around as if searching for an excuse. What happened? I explained in measured detail. How Tyler forced his way in, tried to haul Chelsea out, how I intervened, and how it ended in a physical altercation. Charlotte's eyes widened, and then to my shock, she grew visibly upset at me. Ethan, do you realize who Tyler's father is? Alexander Creed is the managing partner at my firm. This is going to cause so many problems for me at work. I let out a low laugh, but it sounded bitter even to my own ears. I'm sorry your career might be affected, I said. But Tyler physically attacked Chelsea. Should I have let him drag her away? She massaged her temples. No, I'm not saying that. But couldn't you have diffused it without violence? Alexander's going to be furious. Her voice trembled with frustration, and that only tightened the knot in my gut. Charlotte, I said softly, Tyler was out of control. He threw punches at me. You expect me to just talk him down while he's hurting a friend of our daughter? She said nothing for a long moment, fiddling with the collar of her blazer. I just don't see why you had to escalate it. And now you're telling me the police got involved? This is exactly what Alexander doesn't need. A quiet anger stirred in me. What Alexander doesn't need. You're not concerned about me, about Chelsea? It's all about your boss's feelings? She gave me a pained look. This is complicated. You don't understand the dynamics at my firm. If Alexander's upset, it could jeopardize everything. And Tyler, well, he's a hothead, but he's just a kid, Ethan. I forced myself to stay calm, but I could hear the edge in my voice. A kid who's older than Sophia and almost twice her size. A kid who threatened me right before he ran off. Don't trivialize what he did. She sighed, exasperated. All right, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be dismissing your side. It's just, I'm under a lot of pressure. Alexander relies on me. If he thinks my family is causing drama, or if he believes you assaulted Tyler, that's going to land on my shoulders at work. Do you see how that looks? I stared at her, feeling as though the ground had tilted beneath me. This wasn't the Charlotte I remembered, the one who'd have been outraged that anyone threatened our daughter's friend. She seemed more rattled by the notion that her boss might be inconvenienced. My mind replayed Tyler's words from his phone call, the venom in them. You'll want to ask your wife how she likes bigger men. I swallowed, deciding to test the waters. Does Alexander talk to you about Tyler often? She looked startled. Sometimes. He complains that Tyler's impulsive, but I don't see why that matters now. I let the question hang. It might matter, Charlotte, because Tyler specifically mentioned you and Alexander. He was trying to get under my skin. She hesitated, eyes shifting. That's Tyler for you. He's just stirring up trouble. Something about the way she brushed it off made me suspicious, but I let it drop. My anger was close to boiling over, and I didn't want to fling baseless accusations without more proof. Later that day, Charlotte made phone calls to some colleagues, trying to gauge how Alexander would react. I could overhear scraps. Yes, I know, no. Ethan's not in the wrong, but right. Tyler's story might be different. She paced the living room, her voice tight. I thought about how she used to call me from hotel rooms, her voice just as tense but with a different shade of urgency. When she finished, I walked in. Well? She pursed her lips. Alexander's traveling, but he's heard Tyler's version of events. Tyler claims you ambushed him. I told Alexander that's obviously not true. He's not happy, though. A cold laugh escaped me. I bet he's not. Are you? Her shoulders slumped. She looked tired, as if 1,000 thoughts weighed her down. Ethan, this is going to make things incredibly awkward. Alexander keeps a close-knit circle. If he thinks I can't manage my own family's conflicts, or that you're prone to violence... I felt a spark of rage. Violence? I was defending a girl from being manhandled. Why does that get spun into me being the aggressor? She dropped onto the couch, pinching the bridge of her nose. I'm sorry, okay? It's not fair, but that's how it could look. People jump to conclusions. And if Tyler says otherwise... I shook my head, turning away. There were a million things I wanted to say, about how Charlotte should be standing by me, about how maybe Alexander and Tyler were the ones out of line, about how bizarre it was that she prioritized her boss's comfort over her husband's. But I bit my tongue, deciding not to push further yet. That night, we sat at the dining table, tension filling the air like a fog. We ate leftover pasta. No words were exchanged aside from the occasional pass the salt request. Finally, I mustered the courage to ask, "Why are you traveling so much lately?" She paused, fork in midair. "It's the firm's expansion. They're meeting new clients, exploring acquisitions in other states." I pushed the pasta around on my plate. "Okay, so that's all it is?" She nodded, avoiding my eyes. "Yes, it's a lot of client dinners, pitch meetings, weekend conferences. We've talked about this before." We had, but only in vague terms. Another wave of suspicion washed through me. "That's it?" I decided to let it rest for now. The frustration roiling in me wasn't ready to come out. Instead, I forced a dull smile. "Got it. Just checking." After dinner, she disappeared into her office. I heard low murmurs of a phone call, which ended quickly when I walked past to go upstairs. We slept that night on opposite sides of the bed. The distance between us felt like miles. In the days that followed, she gave me the silent treatment whenever the subject of Tyler Creed or Alexander's firm came up. She remained flustered, more concerned with how this drama at the pool might reflect on her professional reputation than what it meant for us. I tried to be patient, but each conversation ended in frustration or cold stares. One evening, I found myself in front of my laptop, rereading the police report the responding officer had emailed me. In black and white text, it documented how Tyler Creed trespassed, assaulted Chelsea Davis, and how I intervened. The rational part of me was proud I'd protected that girl. The rest of me was worried. Did I just make an enemy of the Creeds? At that moment, I had no proof of any wrongdoing between Charlotte and Alexander, but my gut told me something was off. Tyler's taunts, Charlotte's dismissive behavior, the secrecy. It all pointed to something bigger lurking beneath the surface. I closed the laptop, a new resolve tightening my chest. If Charlotte wouldn't tell me what was going on, I'd find out on my own, for Sophia's sake and for my own. As I switched off the lamp by the couch, I caught my reflection in the dark window. My face looked older than I remembered, etched with tension. Somewhere under that face, a part of me felt a smoldering anger. Betrayal or not, I was determined to protect my family. If that meant investigating my own wife's possible secrets, so be it. I had no idea how deep this would go or how quickly it would turn my life upside down. But I was no longer naive enough to pretend everything was all right. Not after Tyler's intrusion, not after Charlotte's strange reaction. I flicked off the last light and walked upstairs, preparing to face whatever came next on my own terms. The morning after Charlotte came home from her business trip, I woke up earlier than usual. My body felt tense, like I hadn't truly rested. I headed downstairs to brew coffee, hoping the simple act of pouring water and measuring grounds would calm me. Outside the kitchen window, clouds drifted across a pale sky, threatening rain, a fitting backdrop for how my thoughts churned. I checked my phone out of habit. Nothing from Tyler Creed, which almost unnerved me more than if he'd sent another threatening text. As I scrolled my messages, though, I noticed an unfamiliar local number had tried calling late last night. They left no voicemail. My mind flicked to Tyler's voice, mocking me. I braced for the possibility that it was him again, using different numbers to goad me. When Charlotte appeared in the kitchen, she barely met my eyes. She went straight for the fridge. She was dressed in a crisp blouse and pencil skirt, her expression set in that work-mode seriousness. There was a tightness in her posture I couldn't ignore. "Morning," I said quietly, trying not to sound hostile. It was still my wife, after all, even if a swirl of doubts about her loyalty had taken root in my mind. She opened the fridge and pulled out a carton of almond milk, then grabbed a protein shake. "I have an early meeting," she mumbled. "I'll be home late." "Another meeting?" I tried to keep my tone even. "Didn't you just come back from a trip yesterday?" She pursed her lips. "Things are piling up at the office, and Alexander Mr. Creed wants me in on a strategy session." A flicker of anger rose. Everything was about Alexander Creed, her boss. My thoughts drifted to Tyler's insinuations. Instead of voicing them, I just nodded. "All right." She set the almond milk down. "Look, about Tyler, Alexander's not happy, but I told him you weren't the aggressor." I stiffened at that name again. Alexander. Something about how she said it like a permanent fixture in her daily life. And did he accept that explanation? I asked. She shrugged. He claims Tyler gave a different version, but let's not talk about it anymore, okay? It'll blow over. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Blow over? Her boss's son had threatened me, attacked Chelsea, and dropped cryptic remarks about Charlotte. But if Charlotte didn't want to discuss it, I wasn't going to force it. I could already feel my patience fraying. Sure, I said. We'll drop it. She lingered for a second as if expecting me to say more. Then she set her cup down and left the kitchen. A minute later, the front door opened and closed. The tension she left behind felt palpable. Maybe she assumed a Cold War was better than actual conflict. Once alone, I sank onto a bar stool, recalling Tyler's phone calls. He'd hinted I should ask my wife how she likes bigger men. I hadn't repeated that line to Charlotte, mostly because part of me didn't want to hear her denial whether true or false. The seed of suspicion had taken root. Is Alexander just her boss or something more? I knew I had to uncover the truth. And if it was all paranoia, fine, I'd gladly accept looking like a fool. But if Tyler was right, I spent the next few hours between phone calls for my consulting work, but my concentration was shot. During breaks, I scoured Charlotte's social media accounts. She had them locked down pretty tight. No suspicious photos, no tags from unknown parties, just occasional updates about the firm's achievements or random motivational quotes. That told me little. After lunch, I decided to check our shared phone plan. We were on a family plan, so the monthly statement sometimes listed call logs and text data. Typically, I never paid it any mind, but that day I realized it might offer clues. When I logged in, though, I discovered Charlotte had set up her own sub-account with e-billing. All I could see was a summary of usage, no details. Another dead end. Or maybe something deliberately hidden. My frustration mounted. I was about to close the laptop when I remembered hearing about simple phone tracking apps. They required physical access to the target device, a quick install, a moral gray area, sure, but if I suspected my wife of betraying me, I felt justified. She's the one who introduced secrets into our marriage. I looked out the window as if expecting the sky to judge me. The clouds were thick, the day gloomier than when I woke. I have to know, I thought. My plan formed. Wait for the perfect moment, slip the app onto Charlotte's phone, then keep an eye on her whereabouts. Maybe I'd find only lunch meetings and real conferences. Or maybe I'd find something worse. Later that evening, around dinner time, Charlotte texted that she'd be working late, so not to wait up. The message came through with zero warmth. I paced the house, my mind swirling. A heavy quiet enveloped everything. I realized Sophia was out with Naomi, likely grabbing a bite near the campus, so I was alone with my suspicions. At around 8 p.m., the phone rang again, an unknown number. My heart clenched. This has to be Tyler or one of his stooges. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity and frustration got the better of me, so I answered. Silence on the line. Then a soft chuckle, definitely male, but quieter than Tyler's brash tone. "Evening, Mr. Parker," he said in a smooth, almost theatrical voice. "I hear you're not so fond of Tyler. Well, let's just say your troubles might be bigger than you think." "Who is this?" I demanded, muscles tensing. A pause, then the voice continued. "Just a friend. And maybe I can offer you some insight. You see, Tyler likes to talk when he's angry, and I've heard him mention your dear wife once or twice in connection with Mr. Creed. Alexander, that is. Thought you might want a heads-up." My stomach dropped. "Are you implying an affair?" My voice came out harsher than intended. "Not implying anything. Merely letting you know that when Tyler's bragging about his old man's conquests, your wife's name seems to surface. Do with that info what you will." He let out a low whistle. "Don't bother tracing this. Burners are cheap." The line went dead before I could bark any more questions. I stared at the phone, my skin prickling. Another piece of the puzzle, or maybe a sick joke. My thoughts turned to Charlotte, how she barely explained her late nights, how she flinched whenever I brought up Alexander. Either I was going mad, or the truth was right in front of me. That night, I sat on the couch, lights dim, hands clasped. My reflection glinted in the blank TV screen. I remembered the day we got married, how I'd promised to love her in sickness and in health, for better or worse. Had she decided some flashy version of success was worth betraying me? Was Alexander offering her more than money, a different kind of thrill? I hated that I doubted my own wife. But in that moment, my instincts screamed that something was profoundly wrong. And Tyler, along with these cryptic calls, was the perfect storm to tear our marriage apart. A while later, I heard Charlotte come in. She didn't see me in the darkness of the living room. I listened as she kicked off her heels, rummaged around the kitchen for a snack, then quietly slipped upstairs. I stayed still, heart pounding, waiting for some sign she'd come greet me. She never did. Eventually, I climbed the stairs, passing the half-open door to our bedroom. She was already in bed, eyes closed, a faint furrow in her brow. I stood there watching her, torn between anger and sadness. If she's innocent, we'll fix this, I thought. But if she's not, I can't just look away. I changed into sweats and sank into the mattress beside her, leaving a wide gap. My brain wouldn't shut off, replaying every suspicious detail. I kept hearing that smooth voice on the phone and Tyler's mocking threats. My breath came shallow, adrenaline refusing to let me sleep. This felt like the tip of an iceberg. If I kept digging, I'd uncover something big, something that might destroy what remained of our family. I stared at the dark ceiling and realized I was willing to destroy illusions if it meant uncovering the truth. Even if that truth cut to the core of who we were. Next morning, after another restless night, I decided I needed advice from someone who knew both me and the situation well enough to help. My mind landed on Michael Davis, father of Chelsea, the girl Tyler had manhandled at the pool party. He was also an entertainment attorney, well-versed in tricky negotiations. We'd been neighbors years ago, before he moved closer to the city. We still kept in touch, though not as often as we used to. I texted him, "Need to talk about Tyler Creed's situation. Are you free this week?" He responded within minutes, "Yes, call me at 2 p.m. Waiting for that call felt like an eternity. Charlotte had left the house early again, and I found myself pacing the living room, scanning emails for my consulting job without really absorbing anything. I wanted time to move faster, to skip ahead and see if my worst fears were confirmed or just a wild goose chase. At exactly 2 p.m., I dialed Michael. His calm, familiar voice immediately put me at ease. We exchanged pleasantries, but I could tell he knew I was itching to get to the point. "How's Chelsea?" I asked. "She's recovering. Her wrist was sprained, but no permanent damage, thank God. I appreciate how you intervened, Ethan. If you hadn't, I hate to think what that boy might have done." I let out a breath, relief mixing with frustration. "I'm glad she's better. Listen, Michael Tyler's still harassing me, calling from strange numbers, implying there's some deeper problem with me and Charlotte." He went quiet for a moment. "Has he threatened you directly?" "Not exactly. More like he's dropping hints that his father, Alexander Creed, is involved with Charlotte. Romantically, I mean." Even saying it aloud made me grimace. "I don't have proof, but Tyler keeps throwing out these cryptic messages." Michael let out a slow exhale. "Ethan, that's serious. If it's true, it puts you in a complicated place personally, and potentially legally if there's harassment or blackmail involved. You know Tyler's personality, impulsive, reckless. But if you think there's more to it, I can help you figure out your options. Just be sure you're ready for what you might discover." I appreciated his honesty. "I'm ready, sort of. Mostly I just need to know the truth." We talked about the possibility of collecting evidence in a legal way. Michael suggested I be cautious about recording calls without consent. Laws vary by state, but recommended I keep notes of every suspicious text, call, or interaction. He also hinted that if Charlotte was indeed involved with Alexander, it could have massive implications for her job. She might feel cornered. Don't confront her blindly. That sobered me. Cornered. That's exactly how Charlotte had seemed lately, caged in her own guilt, maybe. Or maybe I was projecting. After the call, I felt slightly more grounded. Having a friend aware of the situation gave me some backbone. But it also made everything feel more real, like the path I was on might actually lead to a marriage-shattering discovery. Later that afternoon, Sophia showed up. She had a short break between her classes and said she missed real coffee. I made a fresh pot, and we sat in the kitchen, the late summer light streaming through the window. Her presence reminded me how high the stakes were. If Charlotte and I fractured, how would that affect Sophia? Still, I did my best to keep the conversation light until Sophia quietly mentioned, "Dad, I overheard something weird on campus." Some students were talking about Tyler bragging that his dad is hooking up with a coworker. They didn't say Mom's name specifically, but I caught the vibe. "Everyone knows your last name, Parker, and they know Mom's at the Creed firm." A numbness gripped me. "When did you hear this?" "2 days ago," she said, swirling her coffee cup. "After the incident with Tyler, rumors have been flying around. I wasn't sure if I should tell you." Her eyes searched mine for reassurance. I mustered a calm voice. "Soph, you did the right thing. Thank you." She nodded, biting her lip. "Is any of it true?" I couldn't lie to her, but I also didn't want to feed her confusion. "I don't know yet. I'm trying to figure it out. Just trust me, I'll handle it." She let out a shaky breath, then placed her hand on mine. "Dad, no matter what happens, I'm here. And so is Mom. She's just distant, I guess." I patted her hand. "You don't need to worry. Focus on school. Let me figure this out." After Sophia left, I stood in the quiet house, consumed by swirling emotions. Her subtle clues about campus gossip only underscored my suspicion that Tyler's big mouth was revealing real secrets. I'd always believed college chatter was half rumor, half exaggeration, but this time it lined up too well with my worst fears. To clear my head, I decided on a short run around the neighborhood. Usually I do martial arts workouts in my garage, but the fresh air called to me. As I jogged past neatly trimmed lawns and identical mailboxes, I forced myself to slow my breathing. "Focus, Ethan." I mentally cataloged everything I'd learned. Tyler's threats, the mysterious call from that friend, Charlotte's frequent trips, the weird phone logs I couldn't access. All signs pointed toward an affair. Still, I wanted undeniable proof before I confronted her. Back home, sweaty and breathing hard, I tossed my running shoes aside and grabbed a glass of water. My phone beeped with a text. "Hey, Dad. Just letting you know I made it back safely to campus. Love you." A wave of gratitude washed over me for Sophia's concern. She deserved better than living under a cloud of suspicion. That night, Charlotte returned around 8 p.m., not as late as she'd warned, but still late enough that dinner was cold. She looked drained, her makeup slightly smudged, like she'd been rushing around all day. I sat at the table, an untouched plate of pasta in front of me. She glanced at it. "You waited for me?" "Yeah, thought we could eat together." My tone was guarded, but I tried to sound casual. She offered a weak smile and sat down, though she barely touched her food. We spoke about trivial things, my consulting projects, how her meeting ran over, typical stuff couples share at the end of a day. But an invisible wall stood between us. Every time she mentioned her boss, she grew stiffer, her gaze flicking to mine as if to gauge my reaction. I asked nothing about Alexander, not wanting her to clam up. It felt like we were dancing around a black hole, one wrong step, and we'd both be swallowed. When we finished, she collected the plates, heading to the sink. I hovered nearby, drying the dishes. The tension was almost suffocating, so I tried a small question. "How's the new client pitch going?" She paused, water running over the plates. "It's fine, just a lot of prep. Alexander wants me to be point person." Her voice flattened on his name, or maybe I imagined that. I shut off the faucet for a second, forcing her to meet my eyes. "I see. You must be important to him." She blinked. "Yeah, I guess so." Then she pushed past me, turning the water back on, effectively ending the conversation. I went upstairs, heart pounding. My illusions that we could carry on as if nothing was wrong were fading fast. She was hiding something, and I was pretty sure it involved Alexander Creed. In bed, I laid awake, thinking about Michael's words. Don't confront her blindly. Gathering evidence seemed like my only move, but with rumors and phone calls swirling, how long could I keep quiet? I pictured Tyler gloating, or that sly voice on the phone. A cold determination settled in me. Soon, I'd have the answers, no matter how painful they might be. 2 days later, Charlotte got home well after midnight. I was in the living room, reading a news article on my tablet, fighting off drowsiness. She slipped in, stifling a yawn, startled to find me awake. "You're up," she muttered, her voice raspier than usual. She looked worn hair, slightly disheveled, blouse wrinkled. For a moment, a pang of concern overrode my suspicion. She really did look exhausted. "Couldn't sleep," I said, setting the tablet aside. "Busy night?" She hesitated. "Went over some final figures with Alexander. He needed me to stay back." I nodded, noticing a bruise on her forearm. "You okay there?" I asked softly, pointing. She glanced down, eyebrows furrowing. "Oh, I banged into a filing cabinet in a hurry. Not a big deal." My mind flicked to the possibility of Alexander hurting her, but she seemed genuine about it being an accident. "Okay." An awkward pause followed. "Ask more? Let it go?" We climbed the stairs in silence. At the bedroom door, she paused. "Ethan, you're not going to grill me about Tyler tonight?" A lump formed in my throat. "Is that what you expect?" I tried to keep my voice neutral. She sighed. It's been stressful enough. Alexander's furious at him for stirring up so much trouble, apparently. The office is rife with gossip. I'd rather not dwell on it." My gaze lingered on her face. "Fine." My tone was distant, even to my own ears. We changed into our pajamas quietly. A swirl of perfume and stale office air hung around her, an odd combination that made me think of boardrooms and after-work drinks. She slipped under the covers first, turning off her bedside lamp. I took an extra few minutes in the bathroom, mind racing. She's unsteady, avoiding direct questions about the late nights, the bruise on her arm, the half-lie about the meeting. The last few weeks had been a string of half-truths, or no truths at all. The more I watched her, the more I sensed something cracking in her composure like a mask slipping. Or maybe I'm just more attuned to her guilt. Over the next few days, I started noticing patterns. She'd get home late, hush up whenever I approached, or spend hours on the phone in her home office with the door shut. If I passed by, she'd fall silent until I was gone. It felt like living with a stranger. One evening, she told me, "I'm flying to Dallas next weekend for a conference with Alexander." My heart hammered. Dallas was only a few hours away by plane, yet she seemed oddly evasive about the details. Another mysterious trip. I feigned acceptance, but decided that was the final push I needed. That same night, after she fell asleep, I crept downstairs to the kitchen. Quietly, I rummaged in a drawer until I found a small thumb drive device, something I'd bought months ago for an old phone backup. Slipping into Charlotte's home office, I booted up her laptop, praying she hadn't changed the password. My pulse hammered in my ears as I typed it in. Access granted. I exhaled shakily. I was searching for anything that might reveal her real travel schedule. Emails, calendar events, files referencing Dallas or Alexander. A quick scan of her work inbox revealed a message chain labeled Dallas Client Meeting, referencing a hotel near downtown. The tone was formal, but one line from Alexander read, "Looking forward to some extra time to strategize," signed with his initials, AC. No real smoking gun, but it set my teeth on edge. As I was about to copy the thread to the thumb drive, footsteps sounded upstairs. I panicked, slamming the laptop shut. Light footsteps approached the hall. I ducked behind the office door, heart thundering. Then I heard the faint flush of the upstairs toilet. She must have just woken for the bathroom. After a tense minute, the house fell silent again. I slipped the thumb drive into my pocket and tiptoed upstairs. Back in bed, I realized how shaky I was. But the next morning, I installed a simple hidden camera in her office, disguised as a decorative clock. My rationale was, if she was having hush-hush calls with Alexander, I needed them recorded. I also bought a small GPS tracker online, planning to attach it to Charlotte's car. The moral lines had blurred, but my desperation for truth overrode any guilt. A few days later, everything was in place. A friend from my old martial arts circle, Brady, helped me test the camera's feed on a secure server. Charlotte was scheduled to fly out that Friday. I'd have a few days alone in the house to set up additional monitoring. If she and Alexander used the same airline or hotel, maybe I could prove the trip was more personal than professional. I felt uneasy stooping to such measures, but Tyler's repeated insinuations haunted me. I pictured him with that smug grin, confident I was clueless. As I mulled all this over, Charlotte came home one evening around 10 p.m. She walked straight into the kitchen, rummaging through the fridge. I ventured in after her, striving for a calm smile. Grabbed any dinner? She shook her head. Not really. I'm just going to heat some leftovers. We settled into a stilted routine at the table. She picked at her food while I asked about her day in general terms. I noticed her eyes flick toward her home office door. She looked uneasy, as if worried I'd mention her notes or rummage around again. But I pretended ignorance. The cracks in our marriage had widened. She was clearly anxious, and I was suspicious. We barely spoke about normal things like bills or weekend errands. Instead, we lived in a swirl of unspoken tension. I half expected her to break down and confess anything, but that moment never arrived. One night, as we lay in bed, I found myself replaying the first time I'd taught her a basic self-defense move. It was back when we were dating, and she'd joked, "I'm more of a corporate fighter than a physical one." We'd laughed together, free of secrets. That memory felt like a dream now. If she was lying to me, had she ever truly loved me? I inhaled deeply, controlling the ache in my chest. I'll have my answers soon, I told myself. And then I'll know what to do. The next step was waiting for the moment to confront her with proof, or at least enough evidence that she couldn't dodge the truth. But that confrontation would have to wait until after her Dallas trip, if I didn't catch her in some earlier slip. Before drifting to sleep, I clenched my jaw and reminded myself I wasn't just a blindly loyal husband. I was a man who deserved honesty. And if she couldn't give it willingly, I'd uncover it myself, one piece of evidence at a time. 3 days before Charlotte's flight to Dallas, my phone buzzed around noon. I was in my home office reviewing a consulting contract, so at first I ignored it. But then it buzzed again 2, 3, 4 times in quick succession. That was unusual. My stomach dropped as I picked up the phone to see an unknown email notification. Subject line, "Hey there, little husband." I recognized Tyler's sneering nickname instantly. Dread coiled in my gut. I opened the email. "Ethan Parker, I thought you might want to see the truth for yourself. Check the link. Enjoy." Beneath that, a link to a private folder on some shady file hosting site. My hand shook slightly. "Don't do it," a voice warned. But I had to. After all the hints, the late nights, the phone calls, this was the moment everything would break open. Clicking the link led me to a password-protected folder. The next line of the email read, "Password, Big Man." A twisted joke, no doubt referencing Alexander. My mouth went dry as I keyed it in. The folder opened, revealing multiple video files with timestamps. I almost closed the page out of fear, but a dark curiosity compelled me forward. I clicked on the earliest date, maybe 6 weeks prior. The video began in a hotel room grainy footage from a corner camera. I saw a tall man in a suit, face partially turned away from the lens. A woman entered. My breath seized as the camera angle shifted. It was Charlotte. She wore a fitted navy dress that I recognized from her work wardrobe. The man turned, and though the image wasn't crystal clear, I could make out Alexander Creed's profile distinguished silver at his temples, broad shoulders. My eyes burned as I watched him approach Charlotte. She seemed hesitant at first, then he leaned in, kissed her. She responded, albeit with a slight tension in her posture. I felt nauseated, like my heart was hammering outside my body. So it's true. Every rational part of me roared to shut it off, but I couldn't tear my gaze away. The clip progressed to them removing pieces of clothing. My face flushed with anger, betrayal, heartbreak, all swirling inside me. This was no innocent work trip. They were intimately involved. I paused the video, breathing shallowly. My mind reeled with emotions: rage, humiliation, sadness. A lump rose in my throat, tears threatening at the corners of my eyes, though I refused to let them fall. Another part of me burned with fury at Tyler. He'd obviously gotten his hands on these videos, probably from Alexander's personal surveillance or hacking. That kid was sick enough to share them with me just to rub salt in the wound. I scrolled through the file list. More clips, different dates, possibly different hotel rooms. Some had timestamps from just a week ago. This affair has been going on for weeks, if not longer. My world spun. The illusions I'd clung to that maybe Charlotte was just deeply committed to her career shattered. Swallowing hard, I forced myself to watch a portion of another clip. The clarity was better, capturing Charlotte in the same dress she'd worn the night she claimed to be stuck in a late meeting. She was in Alexander's arms, and the look on his face was one of triumph. When I couldn't stand it anymore, I exited the site, slamming my laptop shut as though it could erase the images from my mind. I sat there, elbows on my desk, face in my hands. My heart pounded so loudly I worried the neighbors might hear. She'd been lying to me for God knows how long. My suspicion was no longer speculation, it was laid out in ugly, explicit detail. My wife is having an affair with her boss. The phrase rang in my mind like a cruel mantra. Hours seemed to pass before I moved again. Then my phone beeped a text from Tyler, ironically. "So, how's that for proof? Don't say I never did you any favors. Keep it quiet, little man." The message ended with a smug, winking emoji that made me want to hurl the phone across the room. I inhaled sharply, forcing my emotions into a cage of calm. I couldn't lose my head no matter how badly I wanted to scream. If Tyler was flaunting this, it meant Alexander probably didn't know about the leak. Perhaps Tyler was doing this behind his father's back, for reasons of his own twisted game. That gave me a strange advantage. I have the evidence, and they don't know that I know. A cold clarity slid over me. I needed to protect Sophia. This news would shatter her. I also had to protect myself, emotionally and legally. I thought about Michael Davis's warning gather evidence carefully. I had it now in spades. The question became, what do I do with it? For a moment, I let myself feel raw devastation. The woman I loved for decades, caught in an affair with a man who apparently had no qualms about filming them. Did Charlotte know there was a camera? Or was she fully complicit? Another wave of bitterness crashed in my chest. Eventually, I forced myself to stand, pacing my office. I needed a plan. If I confronted Charlotte blindly, she might deny it, claim I'd been tricked by doctored footage, or run to Alexander for help. Or, who knows, Tyler might escalate the harassment. My mind flashed back to times I'd suppressed my instincts, foolishly believing she was just busy at work. No more second-guessing. The truth was in black and white. She betrayed me, no question. I walked to the window, looking out at the yard. The memory of that pool party stung my attempt to create a normal day ended in chaos. And Tyler's final parting line about bigger men. Now it all made sense in the ugliest way. I grabbed a legal pad and wrote down a list of steps, bullet points of what I needed to do next. Secure the videos in multiple places. If Tyler could access them, so could others. Consult Michael about next legal steps. Plan a strategy for confronting Charlotte, timing, location, everything. Stay calm around Charlotte until then. My hand trembled as I wrote. The reality of orchestrating a confrontation with my own wife felt surreal, but letting anger guide me would sabotage my chances of controlling the fallout. By late afternoon, I had a plan forming. I'd stow the videos on secure drives, compile phone logs, emails, any hint of her false alibis. Then I'd prepare for the day I'd break the news. I felt a dark determination overshadow the heartbreak. If she and Alexander want to lie to me, I'll make sure they regret underestimating me. That night, Charlotte arrived home. She gave me a tired wave, heading upstairs without more than a few words. I offered her a curt nod, ignoring the twist in my stomach at seeing her face. If she noticed my detached demeanor, she didn't comment. Maybe she was too busy playing out her own deceptions. I watched her climb the stairs, the person I once trusted more than anyone. The pang of betrayal flared again, but I swallowed it. Not yet, I told myself. Soon. My chest tightened with resolve. I turned off the living room lights and retreated to my office, locking the door behind me. Tension rippled through my shoulders as I opened my laptop, methodically downloading every clip from Tyler's folder. My heart pounded with each progress bar. A new kind of clarity took hold, a quiet, simmering anger that replaced my earlier devastation. If Charlotte wanted war, she'd get it, but on my terms. And so I began orchestrating the next phase, mindful of Sophia's feelings, mindful that illusions of a perfect marriage had ended forever. I promised myself that I wouldn't rest until I'd seen Charlotte and Alexander Creed face the consequences of their betrayal. I woke up that Monday feeling a peculiar calm, the kind that settles right before taking a drastic step. As sunlight filtered through the blinds, I got dressed, tying my shoelaces with the mechanical care of a man determined to keep his shaking hand steady. Over the previous days, I'd methodically gathered proof of Charlotte's affair with Alexander. The heartbreak was still there, an ache deep in my chest. but it had hardened into resolve. By 8 in the morning, I was on the phone with a client, politely scheduling a business trip that would take me out of town for a few days. In reality, I had no real meetings. My plan was to check into a hotel only a few miles from our house, vanish from Charlotte's radar, and see what she might do with me presumably away. Right after that call, I rang Michael Davis. "Michael," I said in a low tone, "I'm ready to put things in motion. I'll need you on standby for any legal questions." It felt surreal, hearing my own words, like I was orchestrating a sting operation against my own wife. Michael's voice was steady. "I'm here, Ethan. Just keep your head on straight, okay? Don't escalate. Gather your evidence, then let me know if you need me." His caution was warranted. My last few weeks had been spent installing hidden cameras and discreet microphones around the house. It felt like an invasion of my own home's privacy, but the betrayal I'd discovered forced me to act. I knew from phone trackers and suspicious receipts that Charlotte and Alexander sometimes took advantage of my absences. If they dared set foot in my home for their secret rendezvous, this time I'd catch them red-handed on camera, with date stamps. I clenched my jaw at the thought. Before leaving, I took one last walk through the house, checking each covert device. In the living room, I'd replaced an innocuous picture frame with one that had a microlens hidden at the edge. Upstairs, I'd rigged the guest bedroom smoke detector to record. I doubted they'd use the guest bedroom, but I wanted every angle covered. The biggest gamble was the camera in the master bedroom, hidden inside a digital clock on Charlotte's nightstand. If she noticed a new device by her bed, everything would fall apart. But so far, she'd been too preoccupied and, ironically, rarely sleeping in our bed at normal hours. I paused in the hallway, gazing into our bedroom. A flood of memories washed over me. Charlotte and I binge-watching TV shows on lazy Sundays, or curled up reading side by side. Those days felt like a lifetime ago. Now the bed stood as a stage for her possible infidelity. My stomach turned at the thought. "Focus," I reminded myself. I grabbed my suitcase and left, locking the door behind me. On any normal day, I'd kiss Charlotte goodbye, or at least say I'd be back soon. But her car wasn't in the driveway. She'd left early for the office, or maybe for Alexander. A hollow pang hit me, but I forced it away and slid into my own car. The drive to the hotel was uneventful, a short trip weaving through suburban streets and then merging onto a highway for just 2 exits. I chose a modest but comfortable place, not too fancy, not too run down. My cover story was that I'd be away in another city entirely, so no one would think to look for my car in the hotel parking lot. I found an out-of-the-way spot behind a dumpster, just to be safe. After checking in under my own name, I saw no point in going overboard with fake identities. I hauled my luggage inside. The room was standard. 2 double beds, a small desk, a TV that smelled vaguely of stale cigarettes from decades ago. I spent a few minutes unpacking shirts and laptop cords, trying to make the place feel normal. But my mind buzzed with the real purpose of being here. Next, I booted up my laptop. The spy cameras I'd installed at home were all linked to a secure streaming site. I'd tested them over the weekend, so I knew the feed should pop up quickly. Sure enough, within a minute, I had 6 miniature windows on the screen, each showing a different angle of my empty house. The living room couch, the upstairs hallway, the bedroom, even the backyard. The rooms were silent and still. For a moment, doubt flickered. What if they don't show up? I thought. What if Charlotte brings him to a different location? Or what if she was traveling with him for days? Then I told myself to be patient. This plan might take time. I'd give it 3 or 4 days. If nothing happened, I'd still have the video footage from the hotels they'd used in the past. That alone was enough proof. But a part of me wanted to catch them disrespecting me in my own home. Maybe that was pride. Or maybe I needed to see the final nail in the coffin. To maintain my cover, I set an auto-reply on my email saying I was out of town for consulting. Then I settled into the stiff hotel chair, phone in hand, checking for any message from Charlotte. Hours passed. Midday bled into late afternoon. She never texted. I took a short walk in the hotel corridor, my mind looping over the plan. I recalled Michael's words, "Don't escalate." He was right, I had to keep my head. The point was to document, not to unleash blind rage. Yet my chest felt tight at the possibility of confronting them once the truth was undeniable. Stay calm, Ethan. By 6 p.m., the sunlight on the camera feeds shifted to a golden hue through the windows. Still no sign of life. The house remained empty, the cameras capturing only the subtle changes in light. I grabbed takeout from a nearby deli and ate it in my room, appetite dulled by anxiety. My phone remained silent, no call from Charlotte asking how my conference was going, or checking when I'd be home. That only fueled my suspicion further. Around 8, as dusk settled, I watched the feed of my driveway camera. At last, headlights swept across the driveway. My heart pounded. Charlotte's car pulled in. On a separate feed, the front door opened, revealing Charlotte stepping inside. She carried a briefcase, phone pressed to her ear, face drawn in concentration. I couldn't hear her voice yet. My audio feed was glitchy, but I guessed she was still talking to someone from the office. Then, just as quickly, she headed upstairs. I sat forward, eyes locked on the bedroom feed. She walked in, set her briefcase on the bed, and vanished into the bathroom. For a moment, the room was empty again, and I let out a shaky breath. No sign of Alexander. Perhaps it was too early, or she was simply on her own. Then I noticed she'd left the bedroom door slightly ajar. My vantage point showed only part of the hallway. If a second person arrived, they'd be in the camera's view as soon as they stepped in. Minutes ticked by. Charlotte eventually reappeared, changing into casual clothes leggings and a loose sweater. She looked tired, maybe even hesitant, as if waiting for something. My pulse quickened. Was she expecting him tonight? But time dragged and no one else showed up. By 11 p.m., she was downstairs, rummaging in the kitchen. I watched her walk to the living room, phone in hand, texting. Part of me wanted to see the conversation on that phone screen, but I only had video, no direct interception. She stared at the phone for a long moment, then exhaled and went back upstairs. At midnight, she turned off the master bedroom light. Alone. I felt relief and disappointment in equal measure. Perhaps they had a different plan for tomorrow. Or maybe she suspected something. No, I told myself. She'd have no reason to think I was only a short drive away, watching. My phone never buzzed with any message from her, not even a good night. The distance between us felt painfully literal. Before crawling into the stiff hotel bed, I double-checked everything. The cameras, the phone charger, the room lock. My mind buzzed with tension, but a thread of determination kept me anchored. This was just day one. I can be patient. Flicking off the lamp, I stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the hotel AC unit. If they show up in my home, they'll regret it, I thought, a quiet anger surging. Because once I had them on camera, there'd be no more room for denials or half-truths, and I would make sure they understood exactly how it felt to be betrayed in your own house. With that final grim thought, I let my eyes close, letting exhaustion pull me under. My trap was set. All I needed was for Charlotte and Alexander to take the bait. I woke to the shrill ring of my phone. Heart pounding, I glanced at the clock. 7:15 a.m. My laptop was still open, its screen displaying small, silent squares of my empty living room and bedroom. I grabbed the phone. Hello? Ethan? It's Michael. His tone was brisk. Just checking in. Anything happened last night? I rubbed my eyes, recollecting how Charlotte returned alone. Nothing. She came home, but Alexander never showed. Maybe it's too soon. All right, Michael replied. Stay patient. If it doesn't happen in the next couple of days, you still have enough evidence from the other recordings. But you want them actually entering your property together, correct? I sighed. I do. I guess it's personal. The final proof. More personal than I like to admit. We hung up and I hopped in the shower. As hot water beat down on my neck, I tried to calm the swirl of tension. The truth was, a big part of me needed to see them crossing that line in my house. It wasn't just about legal advantage. It was about making them face the magnitude of their betrayal. After dressing, I sat up at the small hotel desk, flicking back and forth between emails from my real consulting business and the camera feeds from home. The day crawled on. Charlotte left around 8:30, presumably for work. By mid-afternoon, I watched her pop back home for about 10 minutes, rummaging in the kitchen, then leave again. The cameras showed a silent, empty house for hours, as though mocking my elaborate plan. To pass the time, I stepped out for a quick lunch at a nearby diner. Every ring of my phone made me jump. I kept picturing Charlotte and Alexander pulling into the driveway the moment I was away from my laptop, but when I got back to the hotel, the feed still showed nothing, just my quiet living room, the coffee table exactly as I left it, the muted sunlight shifting across the carpet. By evening, my nerves were raw. I ate a cold sandwich while refreshing the feed every few seconds. At 7 p.m., Charlotte's car finally pulled in. She was alone again. She spent about an hour in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove, phone pressed to her ear. From the silent feed, I watched her expression shift anger, then forced calm. She might have been talking to a coworker or friend. I couldn't tell. But no sign of Alexander. A creeping worry nibbled at me. Had she grown suspicious of me and switched up her routine? The day ended with her alone in the house once more, heading to bed around 11 p.m. My phone never lit up with a message from her. Normally, I'd at least get a perfunctory, "How's the trip?" text. Now, radio silence. The distance felt suffocating. 2 nights of nothing. I was left with only my swirling thoughts and that intrusive heartbreak, never far from the surface. I tried to drown it with late-night TV and the glow of my laptop, replaying the earlier hotel videos of them. Each time, my chest ached. Then I'd remind myself I'm doing this to finalize everything. I need closure. The next morning, Wednesday, I noticed something new. Around 10 a.m., Charlotte's car was parked at the house, which was odd. She should have been at the office. I leaned toward my screen, heart kicking up a notch. Moments later, I saw her slip into the living room, pacing, as though waiting. She glanced out the window. My camera angle captured her face, nervous, maybe a bit excited. She checked her phone repeatedly, tapping her foot. Then the driveway feed blinked with activity. My throat tightened as a dark SUV pulled up, tinted windows. I recognized Alexander Creed from the occasional glimpses in earlier evidence. He got out, tall and broad, scanning the neighborhood with mild caution. Then he strolled to my front door like he owned the place. My stomach twisted in revulsion. So this is it. I watched the living room feed. Charlotte opened the door, stepping aside to let him in. Their greeting was brief, but intimate, a quick kiss that made me want to punch a hole through my laptop. They spoke in hushed tones, though my hidden mic struggled to pick up clear words. I caught snippets, "Not here," and "Gone until Friday," which likely referred to me. Charlotte must have told him I was gone for a few days. They moved to the couch, sitting uncomfortably close. I switched to the audio from the living room camera, adjusting the gain. Their voices came in softly. Alexander, murmuring, "Relax. He's off at his conference. We have time." Charlotte, quietly, "I still feel uneasy. We shouldn't stay long." I gritted my teeth. Hearing them talk about me so casually, as if I were the intruder in my own home, stoked the fury I'd been keeping at bay. My fists clenched on the desk, but I forced myself to remain rational. Record everything. That was the plan. They sat there, talking for maybe 10 minutes. He occasionally laid a hand on her knee or brushed her hair back. She didn't resist, if anything. Her posture softened toward him, though her eyes flicked around nervously. I realized I was leaning so close to the screen that my forehead nearly touched it. Then Charlotte stood, and Alexander followed her toward the stairs. My heart lurched. They were heading upstairs, likely to the master bedroom. A wave of nausea and anger rolled through me. In my bed? The violation felt profound. But I kept my composure. This was exactly what I'd planned for. Let them walk right into the biggest mistake of their lives. Switching to the bedroom feed, I saw Charlotte step into the room first. She hesitated, glancing around, maybe checking for anything suspicious. My chest tightened. I prayed she wouldn't notice the disguised digital clock on the nightstand. After a moment, she seemed to relax, motioning for Alexander to come in. He closed the door behind them. My camera caught everything in a wide shot. I didn't need to see graphic details, just enough to confirm they were intimately involved in my home. It didn't take long for them to start kissing, leaning against the bed's edge. My vision blurred with rage, but I forced myself to keep watching, to let the camera capture proof beyond doubt. She was unbuttoning his shirt, and he was trailing kisses along her neck. I fought the urge to slam my laptop shut. Stay calm. This is the evidence you wanted. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Michael. All okay? As if he sensed something was happening. I didn't reply. Instead, I watched the nightmare unfold for another minute, ensuring the footage would show their betrayal without ambiguity. Finally, I couldn't stomach another second. I minimized the feed, taking shaky breaths. This is it, I thought, wiping cold sweat from my temples. I had them. My plan was to let them finish, let them leave, and then use the footage as the final, irrefutable blow. But something inside me roared that I needed to do more. Confront them now, my anger hissed. They're in your bed. Make them pay. My rational side argued back. That wasn't the plan. Stick to collecting evidence. But the image of Charlotte's hands on Alexander in my bedroom burned in my mind. I realized I couldn't let them walk away unscathed. Not after I'd spent months living in confusion and heartbreak. With trembling hands, I grabbed my car keys. My body moved on its own, adrenaline surging. There was a line between cold calculation and unbridled rage, and I was about to cross it. Be careful, a voice in my mind warned. Don't do anything rash. But my heart hammered. No. They crossed the line first. I shut my laptop, making sure it continued recording, and rushed out, ignoring every cautionary thought. My chest felt tight, like a coiled spring about to snap. If I made it home before they left, I could confront them face to face. I wanted to see the look on Alexander's face when he realized I wasn't the clueless little husband he believed me to be. And as for Charlotte, I needed her to understand just how deeply she'd cut me. Starting the engine, I peeled out of the hotel parking lot, the route to my house etched in my muscle memory. A swirl of conflicting emotions raged, heartbreak, fury, betrayal. I glanced at the clock, 10:50 a.m. They'd only been in my home for about 15 or 20 minutes. I had time if I could keep my head from exploding. All the while, one clear thought pulsed. I have the evidence. Now it's time to make them face it. I drove at a reckless speed, weaving in and out of traffic, horns blaring behind me. My phone buzzed again, probably Michael calling, but I ignored it. Nothing else mattered except getting home. My mind locked on the image of Charlotte and Alexander in my bedroom, entangled where she and I once laughed and made memories. A cold rage pressed me onward. When I turned onto my street, I slowed enough to park a few houses down. I didn't want them peeking out a window and seeing my car. Heart pounding, I slipped out and crept along the sidewalk, half expecting a neighbor to wander by. Thankfully, no one was around. The day was bright, the sun merciless, and sweat collected on my forehead. At the front door, I paused. My key was in hand. But what if Charlotte had locked the chain from inside? That would slow me down. I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. My chest tightened. They might be upstairs, oblivious. Gently, I tested the doorknob unlocked. Fools, I thought. They didn't even secure the door while they carried on. Slipping inside, I closed the door quietly, adrenaline flooding every nerve. The house was silent except for a faint hum of the air conditioning. My living room looked normal at a glance, no sign that my wife's lover was here. But there on the couch lay Alexander's sport coat, tossed casually. My fingers twitched, itching to grab it and hurl it out the window. Upstairs, I heard a muffled thump, then hushed voices. My heart hammered in my ears. They're still up there. I stepped onto the first stair, moving carefully. Each step felt like an eternity, my breathing ragged. At the top, I could see the master bedroom door was nearly closed, a strip of light illuminating the hallway carpet. I stood outside that door, fists clenched so hard my nails bit into my palms. Charlotte's low laugh drifted out, an alien sound in this context. Then I heard Alexander's deeper murmur. Fury roared in me. Without further thought, I pushed the door open and walked in. Time seemed to slow, my vision sharpening on the scene. Charlotte perched on the edge of the bed, shirt half undone, hair disheveled. Alexander leaning over her, his dress shirt unbuttoned, chest bare. They both froze, eyes snapping to me. For a moment, nobody breathed. Charlotte gasped, scrambling upright. "Ethan?" Alexander stepped back, face twisting in shock. Then, unbelievably, he sneered. "Look who decided to come home early." My voice came out calmer than I expected. "Yeah, I thought I'd check on the house." I glanced at Charlotte's disheveled state, my stomach churning. "Find anything interesting, dear wife?" She jumped off the bed, fumbling to button her shirt. "Ethan, I can explain." I raised a hand, cutting her off. "Don't bother." My gaze shifted to Alexander, who stood a good half-foot taller than me. Up close, I noticed the arrogant tilt of his chin, the faint scent of expensive cologne that polluted my bedroom. You think you can walk in here? Use my home as a cheap motel? He scoffed. You left it wide open, Parker. That's on you. Or maybe you wanted this to happen. My jaw clenched. He's mocking me. The gall. But I forced a measured breath, recalling Michael's advice. Don't let your rage control you. I stepped forward. Get out. Now. Alexander folded his arms, though I saw the tension in his posture. Or what? Little husband's going to forcibly remove me. He glanced at Charlotte, a grin tugging at his lips. You didn't tell me he had a temper. Charlotte looked torn, eyes darting from him to me. Stop it, both of you. This isn't... She tried to move toward me, but I stepped back. My heart felt raw, eyes burning. Don't touch me, I said, voice tight. I've seen enough already. Alexander let out a harsh laugh. What exactly have you seen, Parker? You sure you want to pick a fight with me? My insides quivered with anger, yet I kept my voice low. I'm not picking a fight. I'm telling you to leave my home. He took a step closer, looming. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Don't forget I sign your wife's paycheck. Then he flicked his gaze toward Charlotte. You want me gone, honey? Or should we just continue and let him watch? That last comment almost made me snap, but behind him, Charlotte's face crumpled in a sick mix of regret and panic. She tugged at Alexander's arm. Alexander, don't! Just let's go! I pointed to the hallway. Get out! I repeated, not shouting, but every syllable bristling with control. Stop egging me on! I could sense the fight in the air like a thundercloud about to burst. Alexander rolled his shoulders as if preparing. Yeah, I don't think so. I'm not finished here. My hands trembled. Then I'll make you leave. At that, he lunged, apparently deciding to assert dominance. He aimed a swift push at my chest, maybe expecting to send me tumbling. But I had leverage from years of martial arts practice, plus weeks of pent-up anger fueling me. I pivoted, letting his momentum carry him forward, then used a firm yank to unbalance him. He stumbled, nearly crashing into the dresser. Charlotte let out a small scream. Stop it! Stop! Alexander turned, eyes blazing. You want to do this, you puny! In a flash, he swung a heavy right hook. I ducked, heart pounding, the adrenaline spiked. I was no stranger to fights, but the stakes here were personal and off the charts. He was bigger and presumably strong, but I had technique and a head start. If I let pure rage lead me, I'd risk losing my focus. I exhaled, reminding myself to stay tactical. He swung again, a wide blow I easily sidestepped. Then I delivered a sharp jab to his ribs. He grunted, staggering. Charlotte cried out, Ethan, please! But I ignored her. Alexander tried to tackle me, arms wide, but I used his momentum to trip him. He landed on the carpet with a thud, rattling the nightstand, the digital clock cam teetering precariously. For a moment, I worried the camera might get dislodged, revealing everything, but it stayed put. As he scrambled up, he spat, I'll kill you for that, chest heaving. I glanced around the cramped space. The bed made it hard to maneuver. Let's not wreck my bedroom, I said, voice cold, stepping back. If you're so eager to fight, we can do it outside. A flicker of confusion crossed Alexander's face, but quickly turned into bravado. Fine by me. He brushed past Charlotte, who stood there, hair disheveled, eyes brimming with tears. She started, Ethan, please, don't. I cut her off with a glare that stilled her words. Then I walked out, my pulse thrumming so loud I could hardly think. My intention was clear. Lure him away from the bedroom. Everything was still recording, but I wanted the confrontation somewhere less cluttered, somewhere the camera outside might also catch his aggression. If I can drive him into the backyard, all the better. At the top of the stairs, I paused, letting him take the lead. He shoved me aside, nearly sending me into the banister. My vision sparked with fury, but I maintained my balance. Charlotte trailed behind, pleading incoherently for us to stop. I realized my voice was eerily calm as I said, Alexander, I'm giving you one more chance to leave on your own. He didn't answer. He practically sprinted down the stairs, determined to prove himself. Fine. Let him run. I followed, noticing Charlotte half running after us. She kept saying my name, her voice raw, but I tuned it out. This showdown was inevitable. When we reached the living room, he spun around, chest heaving. I stood opposite him, fists loose at my sides, adrenaline pumping. My gaze flicked to my front door. No, too public. Neighbors might see. Then, as if reading my thoughts, he yanked the door open. "Let's do it out there, tough guy," he snarled, stepping onto the porch. I nodded tightly. All right. The next few seconds felt surreal, stepping outside into broad daylight, neighbors' houses on either side, the suburban calm about to be shattered. Charlotte trailed, begging us to stop. My mind locked on finishing this once and for all. As I led him toward the backyard gate, I couldn't help but notice the unsettled feeling that I was about to cross a line of no return. But the memory of them in my bedroom squashed any hint of hesitation. He wants a fight. He'll get one, I thought grimly. Behind me, Charlotte cried, "Stop this, please!" But I just glanced back, meeting her distraught eyes. The heartbreak I saw there meant nothing now. We'd gone past heartbreak into a place of raw betrayal and rage. She'd chosen her path. I felt only a cold resolve to see this through. I shoved the gate open and walked inside my own backyard, the place where I used to grill burgers for Sophia's friends, the site of so many happy memories. Now it would become an arena for a final confrontation. Alexander stomped in behind me, a mocking grin twisting his lips. I tightened my fists and squared my stance. He cracked his knuckles. "Hope you said your prayers, Parker." Through the pounding in my ears, I heard Charlotte's shaky breath as she followed us, phone in her hand. She looked ready to call for help, but nothing would stop the collision we'd set in motion. I steadied my breathing. "Remember your training?" I told myself. "Remember why you're doing this." My backyard, usually quiet with the faint rustle of trees, felt suffocating under the midday sun. I planted my feet on the grass, heart rattling like a snare drum. Alexander faced me, still half-dressed from the bedroom fiasco, shirt open and flapping. A part of me felt a grim satisfaction. Let the neighbors wonder. I wanted him to leave with no illusions about my strength. He lunged first, trying to catch me off guard. I sidestepped, letting him overshoot. He stumbled, cursing. "You fight dirty," he spat, chest heaving. I tensed. "You're lucky I haven't done worse." My voice shook with anger. Behind him I saw Charlotte near the porch, face ashen. She had something in her hand, her phone, likely. Her eyes pleaded with me, but I refused to engage. She made this choice. Alexander charged again. This time I intercepted with a precise blow to his abdomen. He let out a strangled grunt, doubling over. My martial arts training wasn't about flashy moves. It was about striking where it hurt. I used his bent position to deliver a sharp elbow to his shoulder. He staggered, nearly falling to his knees. A twisted sense of triumph flickered in me. He's not invincible, but Alexander was tall and built. Even rattled, he was formidable. He whirled, swinging a powerful arm that clipped my jaw. Pain flared across my cheekbone, and I stumbled back, blinking. The taste of blood hit my tongue. My vision blurred for a second. He advanced, seizing the moment. "Not so tough," he sneered, slamming a fist at my ribs. I managed a partial block, but the impact still drove the air from my lungs. Stars danced at the edges of my vision. I ground my teeth, ignoring the pain. Focus. We circled each other, grass tearing under our feet. Charlotte stood off to the side, tears streaking her face. "Stop! You'll hurt each other!" Her voice rang out, fear-laced. Alexander barked a laugh, eyes gleaming with aggression. "Isn't that the point?" I forced a slow breath, regaining my stance. "It is for you, apparently." He rushed again, but I feinted left, pivoted behind him, and landed a solid strike to his side. I felt muscle and bone yield under the blow. He gasped, dropping to one knee. The yard fell silent except for his ragged breathing and Charlotte's panicked whimper. "You bastard," he wheezed, trying to stand. I backed away, not wanting to finish him off unless I had no choice. My chest heaved, adrenaline surging. A strangled voice in my mind whispered, "He defiled your marriage in your own bed." My fists tightened, rage threatening to drive me further, but a flicker of caution held me back. Suddenly, Charlotte sprinted forward. "Alexander, stop! Ethan, please! Enough!" She tried to wedge herself between us, arms outstretched. I noticed she was trembling. "Ethan, don't do this!" I bit back a retort, noticing how she used my name with desperation. Where was that care when you were in bed with him? My gaze fixed on Alexander, who rose unsteadily. Fury still danced in his eyes, but I could see him calculating whether he could keep up this fight. "Get out of my way!" Alexander growled at Charlotte, pushing her aside. She stumbled. My protective instincts flared despite everything. I didn't want her seriously hurt. Before I could intervene, she whirled around and hurried toward the back porch. My eyes caught a glimpse of metal, my shotgun, the one I usually kept locked in a safe. She must have grabbed it earlier in her panic. She stood at the edge of the porch, clutching the barrel, tears streaming down her face. "Stop!" she shouted, pointing it in Alexander's direction. "Don't you touch him!" For a moment, Alexander and I both froze. The tension in the yard became electric. Charlotte's voice shook. "I can't let you kill each other," she said, breath trembling. She shifted the gun slightly, as if unsure how to hold it. "Alexander, go. Just leave." He shot her a disbelieving glare, then turned to me. "So you need your wife to protect you now?" I stepped forward, wiping blood from my lip. "She's not protecting me," I said coolly. "She's protecting you. One of us has self-control. You clearly not." His nostrils flared. For a second, I thought he might charge me anyway, gun or not. But Charlotte's unwavering grip on the shotgun left him hesitating. "You'll regret this," he hissed at me. Footsteps sounded beyond the fence, neighbors likely alerted by our shouting. My heart sank, realizing how this must look from the outside. A half-dressed man battered in my backyard, me bleeding from my lip, Charlotte wielding a shotgun in tears. The perfect domestic disaster. I shot a glance at Charlotte. "Put the gun down," I said softly. "Please, I won't kill him, no matter how much he deserves it." She let out a shaky breath, lowering the barrel slightly but not dropping it. Her gaze flicked to me, then to Alexander. "Alexander, go," she repeated, voice raw. He spat on the grass, glaring at both of us. "You'll pay for this," he snarled, pointing at me. "Think you can humiliate me? I own half the city's finances." "Get out," I repeated in a deadened voice, stepping closer to him. My fists still clenched, ready if he took a swing. "Before the neighbors call the police and you end up explaining why you're in my backyard bleeding." His eyes flickered with fear or hatred, maybe both. "This isn't over," he said, then staggered toward the gate. Charlotte kept the gun aimed vaguely at him, tears dripping off her chin. He shoved the gate open and stormed through, slamming it behind him so violently I thought the wood might splinter. Silence crashed over us. The only sounds were my ragged breathing, Charlotte's stifled sobs, and distant murmurs of neighbors trying to see what was happening. Slowly, she lowered the shotgun. "Ethan," she said hoarsely, stepping toward me. Don't." I backed away, not wanting her near me. My lip throbbed, and I tasted blood again. Sweat coated my arms. Everything about me screamed for distance from her. "Just put that thing down. I don't want you anywhere near me." She looked down at the gun as if it had just appeared in her hands. Her shoulders trembled. She set it carefully on the patio table, then turned to me, eyes frantic. "Ethan, please, I know this is horrible, but are you hurt?" My laugh came out strangled. "You're worried about me now? After bringing him here?" Her face contorted with guilt. "I never wanted—" "Stop lying!" I snapped. My head pounded, and I felt dangerously close to losing whatever composure remained. "You've been lying for months, so don't pretend you cared about my well-being." Tears welled again, but she didn't move closer. I was wrong. I was so wrong. But I couldn't let him. I raised a hand to cut her off. "Save it. You saved me for your own reasons. Guilt, or maybe you didn't want to see me killed." My chest felt hollow, echoing with betrayal. I pressed a hand to my ribs, wincing. "Don't think this changes anything. I have proof of everything. I saw you with him." She gasped, eyes widening. "Proof? You..." I nodded, bitterness flooding my voice. "Yes, Charlotte, cameras. I saw you two together in our bed, so don't even try to deny it." She trembled, tears streaming. "Oh God, Ethan." A sudden commotion came from the side gate. Distant voices. I realized the neighbors must have called 911. We could hear the wail of an approaching siren. My head spun as the reality of everything crashed in on me. The fight, the affair, the shattered peace of our suburban street. The bright sun overhead felt mocking. Sure enough, within moments, a police cruiser pulled up outside the fence, lights swirling in patterns of blue and red. "Police!" a voice called from beyond. "Is everyone all right?" Charlotte looked at me, her face pleading. I ignored her, stepping forward to unlock the side gate and wave the officer in. My lips stung, and I knew my cheek was bruised, but I forced myself to stand tall. "We're fine, officer," I managed, voice shaking with residual adrenaline. "There was a trespasser. He left." The officer, a stocky woman with sharp eyes, surveyed the scene. Me, battered, Charlotte crying near the shotgun, the yard in disarray. "Mind if I ask a few questions?" My lungs burned, but I nodded. "Sure, ask away." I cast a final glance at Charlotte, who stood trembling by the table, tears in her eyes, mascara smudged. I felt no pity for her in that moment, only the cold finality of what had just taken place. Everything was out in the open now, complete with physical scars on display for neighbors and the police. "Let's go talk inside," the officer said, eyeing the shotgun warily. Charlotte wiped her face, nodding. I let them pass, lingering a moment to stare at the torn-up grass where we'd fought, the place I'd once taught Sophia to play catch when she was little. Somewhere in the distance, I heard Alexander's car peel away, engine roaring. My heart hammered with a swirl of anger and relief. He's gone for now, I thought, stepping into the house behind the officer. But the wreckage remained my marriage, my trust, everything I'd once built. In that moment, I felt eerily calm. I'd done what needed to be done. I had the evidence. I'd confronted them, and we were all still standing. For better or worse, the next steps would follow a new path, one that would change our lives forever. I remember the day after the backyard fight like a series of snapshots, each one tinged with a surreal edge. My knuckles were bruised, my ribs ached, and the taste of blood still lingered in my mouth. Yet somehow I felt strangely numb. The police had asked 100 questions, and Charlotte had hovered nearby, trembling, occasionally interjecting. In the end, the officer let me stay home on the condition that if Alexander pressed charges, they'd be back. At the time, I was too wired to care. They took Alexander away in an ambulance shortly after the fight. I'd watched from the front window as he was loaded in, strapped to a gurney, cursing under his breath. Charlotte had tried to rush out after him, tears streaming, but I stepped in her path. "Haven't you done enough?" I asked, voice hollow. The paramedics hadn't let her ride along anyway, so she stayed, shaky and lost. By morning, the extent of my battered face and Alexander's injuries started to surface. Neighbors whispered over fences, phone cameras were raised from windows, and within hours, rumors spilled onto social media. A big executive from the Creed Financial Group had brawled in a suburban backyard, allegedly over an affair. The gossipy corners of local news ate it up. The initial headlines were sensational. Corporate tycoon Alexander Creed hospitalized after domestic dispute. My name was sometimes mentioned, sometimes not. The hush around it only fueled speculation. While Alexander was laid up in the hospital, Charlotte found herself cornered. She'd gotten a black eye in the scuffle, probably when she'd tried to pry us apart, and now had to explain it to everyone at work. Whenever I caught a glimpse of her in the bathroom mirror, touching the bruise gingerly, I felt a twisted pang of pity. But anger drowned it out. You brought him here. You allowed this chaos into our lives. That morning, I stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, deciding whether to check the local news sites. My reflection glinted in the dark screen, swollen lip, dried cut on my cheekbone, a face I hardly recognized. The coffee maker beeped behind me, and I realized I'd made a pot out of habit once upon a time. I always brewed coffee for two. Charlotte lingered in the hallway, uncertain whether she was welcome. She finally cleared her throat. "Ethan," she said softly, "any word on Alexander?" She looked like she'd barely slept. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her hair was messy, not styled to perfection like usual. I kept my voice distant. "I heard he's in stable condition, but that's about it." I didn't add that a detective had left a voicemail asking me to come in for a statement if Alexander pressed assault charges. I wasn't about to volunteer more information than necessary to her. She swallowed, glancing at the living room where the remnants of the prior day's chaos still showed some scuff marks on the wall, an overturned lamp. I'm sorry, she whispered, voice cracking. I never meant for any of this to... I cut her off. Save it. I didn't have the energy to argue. My mind was consumed by practicalities, the swirling rumors, the possibility of a lawsuit or arrest, the avalanche of shame she'd unleashed on our family. Focus on the next step, I told myself. Don't get dragged into her apologies now. Around midday, my phone buzzed, a text from Michael Davis, my attorney friend. You should consider leveraging the footage if Alexander threatens legal action. Call me. It felt cold, but necessary. I'd told Michael I had video proof of Alexander's trespassing and aggression footage from my hidden cameras. If Alexander tried to paint me as the villain, I could show he was the intruder in my own home. I stepped outside for some air, phone in hand. The midday sun felt punishing, beads of sweat forming on my brow. Across the street, I saw Mrs. Lane, a longtime neighbor, watering her flowers while throwing nervous glances my way. I tried to ignore her as I dialed Michael. He answered on the first ring, voice steady as ever. Ethan, how are you holding up? About as well as you'd expect, I said, looking at my bandaged knuckles. Any news on Alexander's side? He sighed. Nothing official yet. Word is, he's dealing with a fractured rib, bruised kidney, maybe more, but his lawyers will be weighing their options once he's stable. A flicker of guilt tried to surface, but I forced it back. He'd come at me, and I'd defended myself. He asked for it. I have no regrets, I muttered. Michael cleared his throat. Well, look, the media's picking this up. Creed is a well-known figure, so you can expect scrutiny. Be mindful of what you say publicly. Not planning to give interviews, I said dryly. I just want to protect my daughter and myself. Exactly. And if they try to spin it as you attacking him, we'll produce the footage. Did you secure copies in multiple places? I nodded. Yes, it's all backed up. My mind drifted to the external hard drive I'd locked in my desk drawer, plus cloud backups. The memory of those videos still burned me, seeing Charlotte locked in Alexander's arms, right in my own bed. Michael exhaled. All right, keep me posted on any contact from Creed's side. And Ethan, I know it's tough, but try to stay composed. The public spotlight can be unforgiving. I ended the call, staring at the phone for a moment. Stay composed. That phrase was haunting me. The entire fiasco was blowing up on local news, and Charlotte still lurked inside the house, unsure if she should pack up or keep apologizing. When I went back in, she stood in the living room, pacing. Ethan, I've been told I need to see HR at the firm tomorrow, she said, swallowing hard. They know something about me and Alexander. I don't know how it leaked. My jaw tightened. Leaked. Charlotte, half the neighborhood saw him being hauled out of our yard on a stretcher. How secret did you think this would stay? She winced, tears brimming. I told them it was a misunderstanding, that I got caught in the crossfire. But there are rumors about the affair, about Tyler. She choked on her words. I let out a slow breath. This was exactly the collateral damage I'd been bracing for. Your firm can't afford a scandal involving their senior partner. They're probably trying to cover themselves. Her voice shook. It's all unraveling. Everything we built. I'm so sorry. She reached out as if to touch my arm, but I jerked away. Don't, I said quietly. You made your choice. She started crying in earnest then, silent sobs that made her shoulders shake. Once, I might have been compelled to comfort her. Now, I felt only a bitter mix of anger and resignation. Her tears wouldn't erase the betrayal or the chaos that followed. Later that afternoon, as we avoided each other in the house, the phone rang repeatedly. Some calls were from local reporters, wanting a statement. A couple were from curious neighbors or acquaintances. I let them all go to voicemail, too drained to navigate the labyrinth of gossip. After the fourth call, I unplugged the landline. If people wanted to talk, they'd have to find some other way. By nightfall, Charlotte retreated to the guest bedroom, probably crying into her pillow. I stayed downstairs, flipping through the news channels until I found a short segment about the suburban scandal. Sure enough, they had a grainy smartphone clip of the ambulance in front of my house, neighbors gossiping. The anchor speculated that Alexander Creed was in the hospital, rumored affair involved. My name was mentioned briefly, though they got some details wrong. They said I was a local office worker, not a consultant. But the gist was accurate. The shame settled over me like a lead blanket. At least they don't have the footage from inside the house. In that moment, I realized I had to decide how public I was willing to go. If Alexander tried to save his reputation by painting me as a violent husband, I'd release enough evidence to prove my side. But if he stayed quiet, maybe I could handle this crisis without more damage. The decision weighed heavily on me. I checked my phone again, half expecting Tyler to send another smug text or video. But there was nothing. Too busy dealing with his father's injuries, I supposed. Or maybe he was just biding his time, letting the media storm do the work. Either way, I couldn't dwell on it. My focus needed to be on the immediate fallout. At midnight, I finally went to bed alone. The house felt haunted, every shadow recalling a memory of better times. I lay awake, hearing Charlotte's muffled crying through the wall. Even that sound was overshadowed by a fierce sense of betrayal. Outside, a car rumbled by, headlights sweeping across my ceiling. The world keeps turning, even as mine collapses. Eventually, I drifted off, bracing for the next wave of consequences when morning arrived, more reporters, more confusion, and whatever decisions the Creed firm made about Charlotte. In the quiet darkness, one grim certainty echoed, "There's no escaping this. The whole world is about to know the mess we've made." It was a dull, overcast morning when Sophia returned home. She'd texted me an hour earlier. "Dad, I heard rumors. I'm coming." I felt a weight in my chest, knowing I'd have to tell her everything. Part of me wished I could shield her from the ugliness, but the time for half-truths had long passed. When she stepped through the front door, her face was pale. "Dad," she said, scanning my bruised jaw in the messy living room. "Oh my God. Are you okay?" I forced a weary smile. "I'm hanging in there." I noticed Chelsea and Naomi hadn't come with her this time. Likely they stayed on campus, letting Sophia handle the family storm alone. Sophia hesitated. "Is it true about Mom and Mr. Creed?" Her voice cracked on those words, eyes searching mine for denial or confirmation. I didn't flinch. "Yes," I replied softly. "It's true. I confronted them. It got ugly, and well, you can guess the rest." My hand brushed the bruise under my eye. "He's in the hospital." She let out a shaky breath. "I can't believe this." She glanced around as if the furniture might confirm her worst fears. "Where's Mom?" I nodded toward the guest room. "She's dealing with things." An understatement. Charlotte had come home from the firm's HR meeting that morning, eyes swollen, and locked herself away. She'd said nothing except that she was on indefinite leave, pending an internal investigation. Sophia swallowed hard. Then, drawing a deep breath, she said, "I want to talk to her. Alone." Her tone was resolute, and I recognized the determination in her eyes. She'd inherited that from Charlotte, ironically. I motioned for her to go ahead, taking a seat on the couch as she disappeared down the hall. Through the thin walls, I could hear muffled voices. At first, it was quiet, but then came Sophia's raised tone, punctuated by Charlotte's sobs. I caught fragmented phrases like, "How could you?" and "Dad didn't deserve this." Each word felt like a blow to an already fractured home. About 10 minutes later, Sophia came back, wiping her eyes. She admitted everything, she said in a choked voice. Said it was a mistake, she was seduced by power, or some bull like that. I nodded. Figures. She hesitated, eyes full of heartbreak. What happens to us now? I gestured for her to sit, and she sank beside me, tense and trembling. "I don't know, Soph," I said softly. "Your mom and I things can't go back to normal. I've already contacted Michael Davis to start legal proceedings." I avoided saying divorce outright, but the implication was clear. Her breath caught. "A divorce? Oh, Dad." Pain clenched my chest. "I'm sorry." I hated seeing her tears, hated being the bearer of more misery. But there was no gentle way to present the truth. The family she grew up with had imploded. "She didn't just cheat on me, honey. She brought him into our home, let him disrespect our family. I can't forgive that." Sophia leaned against my shoulder, silent tears falling. I wrapped an arm around her, feeling the burn of guilt. She whispered, "I thought Mom was just stressed with work I never imagined." I swallowed, remembering all the nights Charlotte had come home late, the hidden phone calls. "None of us did," I said. We sat like that for a while, father and daughter, both grappling with the ugliness of betrayal. By afternoon, Naomi and Chelsea did drop by to offer support. They brought a bag of groceries, mostly comfort food. Chelsea, her wrist still slightly bandaged from Tyler's attack weeks ago, gave me a careful hug. "We've been worried about you," she said softly. "We saw the news." Naomi looked over at Sophia, who was staring at the floor. "We'll stay as long as you want, maybe help out around here." She cast a quick glance at the hallway where Charlotte was presumably holed up. I mustered gratitude. "Thanks, girls. Seriously. I appreciate it." Their presence reminded me of the innocence that once filled this house, now overshadowed by scandal and heartbreak. Later, as we ate a subdued dinner in the living room, the TV on mute, I sensed the precarious calm. Chelsea and Naomi exchanged anxious glances every time Charlotte's name came up. The tension was thick, so I tried to steer the conversation elsewhere. We talked about their upcoming finals, some college event next week, but the mood stayed heavy. Eventually, the front door opened, and Charlotte stepped out of the guest room, eyes red, face puffy. The girls tensed. Charlotte cleared her throat softly. "Sophia, can I talk to you again?" Before Sophia could respond, I interjected. "Let her be, Charlotte. She's heard enough excuses for one day." Sophia nodded, looking at her mother with a mixture of sorrow and anger. "Maybe later," she said quietly, then returned her gaze to the cold lasagna on her plate. Charlotte lingered a moment, lips trembling, before drifting back into the hallway like a ghost. After dinner, the girls washed dishes while Sophia and I sat on the porch step outside, letting the cool air wash over us. She fiddled with her phone, chewing her lip. "Dad, I still love Mom, but I can't believe she did this. It's like she's a different person." I sighed. "She's your mother and you'll always love her. But trust that's another story. It won't mend easily." Then I looked her in the eye. "Soph, you're an adult now, but if you ever need to talk or want me to handle communications with your mom, let me know. I don't want you dragged into the middle." She nodded, wiping her cheeks. "Thanks. I hate seeing you like this." I managed a wry smile. "I'll survive," I said, though my heart felt like it was in tatters. "I have you. That counts for a lot." That night, Naomi and Chelsea stayed over, crowding the living room couch. Sophia insisted on sleeping in her old bedroom upstairs, wanting to keep some shred of normalcy. Meanwhile, Charlotte barely emerged. If she did, she tiptoed around us, as though afraid to be seen. In the morning, the real fallout hit. Charlotte received a call from the firm, telling her not to return while they conducted an internal probe. She emerged from the guest room as I finished my coffee, tears streaming. "Ethan," she said hoarsely, "I might lose my job. They say I violated ethics codes by getting involved with Alexander. There's talk of scandal. I don't know what to do." I said nothing, focusing on the swirl of coffee in my mug. Sympathy threatened to break through. But I reminded myself, she chose this. She risked everything for her affair. Instead, I stood up and walked away, leaving her to her grief. With each hour, the tension in the house rose. Sophia confronted her mother again, tears flying, accusing her of destroying our family. Chelsea and Naomi tried to mediate, but the anger was too raw. Eventually, Charlotte locked herself away once more. As evening fell, Michael Davis called to confirm we'd set up the initial paperwork for a divorce. I felt both relief and sorrow. This was it, I realized. No turning back. My marriage of many years was effectively over. When I hung up, I noticed Sophia watching me, eyes pained. "You're doing it," she whispered. "It's real." I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah, it's real." A hush settled on the house that night, a hush of impending change. Charlotte in the guest room, me in the bedroom that felt hollow and cold without the shared warmth we once had. I tried not to picture her crying or recall the way she used to fall asleep against my shoulder. That's gone, I told myself. She made sure of it. Somewhere around midnight, I drifted off into fitful sleep, the sense of a splintering family weighing on my dreams. The future felt uncertain, but at least the illusions were shattered, no more secrets to strain under. I'd walk into the next day with the knowledge that we were all irreparably changed, and a divorce was on the horizon. Collateral damage in the wake of an affair that burned everything in its path. A few days after Sophia's emotional homecoming, I found myself in Michael Davis's downtown office, the walls lined with legal books and framed degrees. The place smelled of leather and stale coffee. I'd come alone, leaving Charlotte and Sophia at the house. We both agreed we needed to finalize a path forward, and Michael was the best to guide me. Michael, tall, with slightly graying hair, sat behind his desk, reviewing documents with a careful eye. "All right," he said, looking up. "You want to move toward a formal divorce petition?" I nodded, swallowing the tightness in my throat. "Yes. I can't see any alternative. She made her choice, and I can't pretend otherwise." He tapped a pen on the desk. "There are a few angles to consider. With the media attention, we might want to keep the details from going public. That means we can file in such a way that personal matters remain sealed, including the footage of her affair." A wave of conflicting emotions hit me. Part of me wanted to broadcast her betrayal to the world, to brand her and Alexander as liars. But another part felt exhausted, wanting to shield Sophia from more public scrutiny. "Sealing it would be best," I said quietly. Michael gave a short nod. "Agreed. Now what about the division of assets? She's a co-owner of the house in legal terms. There's also potential alimony since you've both contributed financially over the years." My jaw tightened. I recalled how I'd told Charlotte she wasn't getting the house, not after defiling our marriage within its walls. "I want the house," I said firmly. "I refuse to budge on that." Michael made a note. "Understood. And if she disputes it?" I let out a breath. "I have evidence. Footage, text logs, everything. I'll use it if I have to." My voice sounded cold, even to myself. "She had an affair with her boss, brought him home. That's a serious violation." Michael pursed his lips, but didn't argue. "All right, then we'll demand you keep the house. As for alimony, that might hinge on how her firm handles her. If she's fired, she might try to claim financial hardship. But we can argue her affair triggered the fallout, so you shouldn't have to pay." I clenched my fists at the thought of Charlotte profiting from her own wrongdoing. Exactly. The anger simmered beneath my calm facade. Michael let the silence settle, then said gently, "You know divorces can get messy, especially with high emotions. She might cave quickly, or she might fight tooth and nail. I want you to be prepared." I gave a grim nod. "I'm prepared." We spent another hour sorting through paperwork, reviewing potential strategies. Each line felt surreal: property division, child support for Sophia, even though she's mostly an adult, spousal maintenance. The legal jargon turned the personal tragedy of my marriage into a sterile list of bullet points. When we finally finished, I left with a stack of forms and a weight in my chest. Outside, the city hummed with lunchtime traffic. I stood on the sidewalk, letting the cool breeze hit my face. My phone buzzed, a message from Charlotte. "We need to talk about the next steps. Please come home." My chest tightened. Part of me wanted to ignore her, but I knew we had to face the logistics of divorce eventually. I arrived home to find Charlotte in the living room, dressed in business casual clothes that hung a bit loose. She'd lost weight over the past week, presumably from stress. She turned toward me, clasping her hands. "I talked to HR," she said quietly. "They're suspending me without pay until their internal investigation concludes." Her eyes flickered with despair. "I might get fired." A flicker of something pity, regret stirred in me, but I pushed it down. "I'm sure Creed's lawyers are pushing for damage control," I said, removing my jacket. She nodded, sinking onto the couch. "They want to avoid a scandal. Alexander might have to step down as managing partner temporarily." I'm so sorry." She wiped her eyes. "I never expected it to go this far." I stared at her, memories flooding me. Our early years of marriage, the way we used to dream about the future, the nights we'd stayed up with a fussy baby Sophia, all overshadowed by her betrayal. "You made choices," I said flatly. "So did Alexander. Now the firm is dealing with it." Her voice cracked. "Are you filing for divorce?" The direct question. I swallowed, my heart pounding. "Yes." Silence stretched. She bowed her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I can't blame you," she whispered. I want to at least settle things as peacefully as possible for Sophia's sake." I don't want a long, ugly fight in court. I thought about that. The attorneys, the depositions, the potential for everything to go public. If she was willing to settle, maybe I could spare us all a gruesome legal battle. Then don't fight me on the house, I said quietly. And don't try to get spousal support. She wiped her tears, nodding hesitantly. Okay, I'll cooperate. A strange mix of relief and residual anger churned inside me. Is it really going to be that simple? I doubted it. But her readiness to concede was at least a start. I'd have to see if she stayed true to that once the legal forms appeared. Over the next few days, we had several strained conversations about dividing up bank accounts, clarifying who'd handle the last of our shared bills. She mentioned the possibility of moving out once we had a formal agreement. Each time she hinted that we could fix this, I shook my head. No, it's too far gone. Meanwhile, Alexander's condition stabilized in the hospital. Rumors circulated that he was planning to resign from daily operations at the firm, though he might remain a shareholder. I heard from Michael that Alexander's attorneys briefly considered pressing charges against me for assault, but they backed off when they realized I had damning footage of him intruding on my property. My leverage worked, I thought grimly. Sophia tried to maintain some sense of normalcy, alternating between campus life and checking on me. Naomi and Chelsea visited occasionally, offering quiet support. They all seemed relieved that Charlotte and I weren't tearing each other's heads off, though the atmosphere remained tense. Charlotte stayed in the guest room, barely speaking to me unless it was about legal or financial matters. One evening, Michael came by the house to finalize a preliminary settlement he'd drafted. We sat around the dining table, me, Michael, and Charlotte, who looked pale as she flipped through the documents. Michael cleared his throat. So, if both parties sign, Ethan retains ownership of the house. Charlotte agrees to no spousal support, and you both split the checking and savings accounts equitably. Retirement funds remain with each respective individual, correct? Charlotte nodded slowly. Yes. Her voice trembled. I just want to close this chapter as soon as possible. I studied her face, feeling that pang of betrayal again. Once upon a time, we were partners. Now we're strangers signing away a marriage. I said nothing, only nodded to Michael, who passed us both a pen. We signed, the scratch of ink sounding oddly final. Michael collected the pages. This is just the preliminary settlement. Once the divorce is filed formally, we'll finalize the decree. If no disputes arise, this should go quickly. Charlotte's hand shook, tears glistening in her eyes, but she mustered a shaky smile in my direction. I looked away, not wanting to see the regret etched there. My anger felt too raw for sympathy. She stood and left the room, footsteps echoing down the hall. Michael patted my shoulder. You did the right thing, Ethan. Avoiding a long court war is best for everyone, especially your daughter. I sighed. Yeah, thanks, Michael. He gathered his briefcase and left, leaving me in the half-lit dining room. For a moment, I stared at the documents on the table, the official start to ending a marriage I once thought would last forever. My heart felt heavy, but a certain numb relief crept in. At least the fight is almost done. No more living in limbo. Sophia appeared in the doorway, eyes red. So it's happening? Yeah, I said, forcing a calm tone. It's happening. She nodded and quietly approached, wrapping her arms around me. I returned the hug, closing my eyes. Maybe we could find a path forward without endless bitterness. Maybe. But as I looked at the paperwork on the table, I realized that no legal settlement could erase the emotional wreckage. We'd parted ways as a family. All that remained was to wait for the final court date, sign a few more lines, and watch Charlotte walk out the door. It was a pale gray afternoon when Charlotte packed her last few belongings. The formal divorce petition had been filed a week ago, and the preliminary settlement was already in motion. I stood by the living room window, arms crossed over my chest, watching her move back and forth from the guest room to the front door with boxes. Each trip felt like a slice of finality. Sometimes Sophia helped, sometimes she hovered uncertainly. The house was unnervingly quiet. No music, no TV, just the shuffle of feet and the faint scrape of cardboard across the floor. Naomi and Chelsea had come by earlier to help Sophia move some of her old clothes from upstairs to a storage bin, but they left once they realized the tension was too thick to bear. I spotted Charlotte setting a box by the door labeled wedding albums and photos. My heart twisted. We hadn't decided who would keep all those memories, or if we even wanted them anymore. When she paused, noticing me watching, her eyes flickered with sorrow. She said nothing, though, continuing her slow, mechanical task. Finally, she stepped into the living room, stopping a few feet away. She wore a simple sweater, jeans, and sneakers far from her usual polished office attire. Without her heels, we were almost eye-toey. I saw the exhaustion etched into her features, a reflection of my own. "Ethan," she began in a trembling voice. "I want to say—" I raised a hand. "Don't. Please." My voice was tight. We'd gone through enough stilted apologies and tearful confessions in the past days. "Just finish packing?" Tears welled in her eyes. She nodded, blinking them away. "Okay." Time passed like molasses as she ferried out box after box. Sophia helped occasionally, though she kept her distance from me, uncertain how I'd react to her assisting her mother. I understood. She was torn between us, wanting to maintain some connection to her mom without betraying me. The day felt soaked in heartbreak. In between the packing, Charlotte spoke quietly to Sophia near the front door. I couldn't make out the words, but I noticed Sophia's tearful expression, the half-hug they shared. Then Charlotte returned to collect more items from the guest room. This was the final unraveling of a life I'd once cherished. By late afternoon, the last box was carried out. Charlotte stood on the porch, keys in hand, glancing back at me. I put the house keys on the kitchen counter," she said softly. "I won't need them anymore." I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. She took a shaky breath, as if steeling herself. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For everything." I stared at her, memories flashing our wedding day, the laughter we used to share, the moment I discovered her betrayal. "I know," I managed, "but sorry doesn't fix it." She winced, tears brimming again. "I know." For a second, she looked like she might step forward, but then she just turned away, hurrying off the porch to her car. She loaded the last box, closed the trunk, and slid into the driver's seat. The engine sputtered to life. Sophia hovered behind me, silent tears on her cheeks. As Charlotte's car pulled away from the curb, I felt a suffocating mixture of relief and grief. The woman I'd built a life with was driving off, leaving the house we once called home. A part of me still wanted to chase her down, fix it all, but I knew that was a fantasy, buried under too many lies. When the car disappeared around the bend, Sophia let out a shaky breath. "She's gone," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," I replied, my stomach twisting. "She is." That evening, the house felt cavernous. Empty spaces screamed with the absence of Charlotte's presence, no more heels clacking, no more subtle perfume. Just me and Sophia in a home that felt twice its size. We tried to cook dinner, but neither of us had an appetite. After picking at our food, we ended up in the living room, a muted sitcom on the TV that neither of us really watched. Eventually, Sophia spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "Dad, are you okay?" I hesitated, searching for an honest answer. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "I'm angry, but I'm also sad. I feel relieved that the worst of it is over, but I'm gutted about what we've lost." Her eyes glistened. "I'm so sorry." "Not your fault," I said softly. We sat in silence for a bit. The show on TV played canned laughter that felt painfully out of place. Around 9 p.m., she decided to drive back to campus. There were exams looming, and she needed to refocus on her studies. I walked her to the door, hugging her tight. "Call me any time," I said, the dread of being alone creeping in. "I will," she promised, wiping her tears. Then she drove off, leaving me with nothing but the walls of a house that echoed my footsteps. I wandered from room to room, noticing the vacant spaces where Charlotte's belongings had been. A half-filled closet in the master bedroom, the single toothbrush in the bathroom instead of two, the empty drawer in the dresser. Each detail hammered home the reality of my new life. I was alone. I found myself in the kitchen, staring at the wedding albums box Charlotte had left. My chest tightened painfully. She hadn't taken them. Maybe she couldn't bear to face them either. I lifted the lid. flipping through a few pages of smiling photos, her in a flowing gown, me in a tux, both of us starry-eyed with promise. We had no clue how it would end. The weight of betrayal pressed down like a boulder on my heart. I closed the box, shoving it onto a shelf out of sight. Not tonight. Eventually, I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat on the back porch, the same yard where I'd fought Alexander. The moon cast pale light across the grass. I sipped quietly, replaying the events of the last few weeks, the discovery, the confrontation, the marriage reduced to signatures on legal documents. Now the final page had been turned. Charlotte was gone, and I was left with a house and a broken heart. The divorce papers were just a formality now. Yet despite the overwhelming sadness, a tiny part of me felt a flicker of hope. I survived. My career was intact, I hadn't gone to jail, and though battered, I stood on my own 2 feet. I thought of Sophia, leaning on me for strength, and how we'd weathered this storm together. Maybe in time, this house could become a home again, a place for new memories. For now, though, the hurt was too fresh. I watched the moon climb higher, finishing my beer in the silence. Tomorrow, I'd start cleaning out the remnants of Charlotte's presence, preparing for the official divorce decree in a few weeks. The thought of that final court date both calmed and unnerved me. Once it's done, there's no going back. In the hush of the night, I closed my eyes, letting the wave of grief wash over me one last time. But behind that grief lay a seed of resilience. Endings are painful, but they also clear the way for something new, I told myself, uncertain yet determined. I breathed in the cool air and let the moment settle. I can't change the past, but I can control what happens next. I woke up to a quiet house so quiet, it felt like a vacuum had swallowed all the usual morning sounds. No clinking dishes, no hum of Charlotte brewing coffee, just me and the faint rustle of leaves outside the window. For a moment I lay there staring at the empty side of the bed, remembering that it was mine alone now. She'd taken most of her things with her. And the bed itself, well, I'd dragged that old mattress out to the curb a few days after she left, unable to stand the memory of it any longer. Now I slept on a new mattress, one I'd ordered online. The sheets were crisp and smelled faintly of detergent, not of heartbreak. I forced myself up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. As I passed a mirror, I caught a glimpse of the bruises that had mostly faded from my jaw. A faint shadow remained, a reminder of the fight in my backyard. All that's left is the echo of pain. I sighed and went downstairs. The kitchen felt bigger somehow, the counters emptier. A single coffee mug sat in the cabinet. I donated or stowed away the extra sets to avoid the ache of seeing them. The divorce papers had been signed a few weeks ago, marking the official end of my marriage. Yet the ghost of that relationship lingered in every corner of this place. Sometimes I still expected Charlotte to walk in the door, complaining about a client call or rummaging through the fridge. But she never did. I brewed a pot of coffee, poured a single cup, and stared out the window at the backyard. My reflection glinted faintly in the glass. The grass had grown back in the spot where Alexander and I had fought, no longer showing the drag marks from that violent day. Nature heals quickly if only people did the same. My chest tightened at the thought. I had a consulting call in an hour with a new client, a small tech startup that needed supply chain advice. Work had picked up since the scandal, ironically. A few businesses reached out after hearing how I'd stood my ground against a powerful man. Some saw me as a cautionary figure. Others admired me for not backing down. It was strange being known for that, but at least it's bringing in revenue. Still, money couldn't chase away the lonely hush I felt each morning. A week after the finalization of the divorce, I'd started going back to the dojo. It was an attempt to burn off the restless energy I felt punching a bag, sparring with a partner. The sense of physical discipline helped me hold together the emotional chaos inside. Eventually, the doorbell rang. Heart thudding, I wondered if it might be Charlotte, come to reclaim some leftover box of memories. But when I opened the door, it was just a delivery guy handing me a package. New accounting software for my business. I thanked him, stepping aside so he wouldn't notice my tense shoulders. Calm down, Ethan, I reminded myself. She's not coming back, and that's a good thing. Around midday, my daughter Sophia swung by. Even though she was still living on campus, she'd taken to visiting more often. Sometimes she'd show up with groceries or leftover pastries from a campus event. Today, she carried a brown paper bag that smelled of cinnamon. "Dad, I brought you these scones from the bakery near school," she announced, letting herself in. I forced a smile. "Thanks, Soph. That's thoughtful." We settled at the kitchen table, the one piece of furniture I hadn't replaced, too many memories scratched into its surface. She eyed me carefully. "You look better. I mean physically. How are you feeling?" I shrugged, biting into a scone. "Not gonna lie. Some days are rough, but I'm getting by." Her expression softened. "Mom texted me earlier," she said quietly. "She asked how you were doing. I told her you seem busy with work and that you're going to the dojo again." My jaw tightened, but I kept my tone neutral. "I appreciate your honesty." I couldn't blame Sophia for maintaining contact with her mother. She was trying to balance loyalty to both parents. "How is your mother?" Sophia fiddled with her coffee cup. "She's struggling. She lost her job at the firm. They pinned the scandal on both her and Alexander. She was forced to resign. She's staying in a small condo across town." She paused, giving me a cautious look. "I'm not defending her, Dad, but she's had a rough go." I inhaled, a swirl of conflicting emotions in my chest. "I'm sure she has," I replied quietly. A part of me still flared with anger when I thought of Charlotte's betrayal, but another part pitied the ruin she'd brought on herself. "She made her choices, though." Sophia nodded sadly. We let the conversation drift to safer ground: her classes, a new research project. She helped me tidy up the living room, which still had a half-empty box of old DVDs. At one point, she picked up a photo album that Charlotte had left behind. The pictures were from a family trip to Maine years ago, all smiles and bonfires on the beach. Sophia's eyes lingered on a shot of me and Charlotte with arms around each other. "We were so happy," she murmured. "Past tense," I said gently, taking the album from her. I laid it aside, swallowing the lump in my throat. The day's light was shifting through the windows, casting shadows in the corners of the living room. The memory of simpler times threatened to drown me in nostalgia. "I can't go back," I reminded myself, "but maybe I can move forward." Before leaving, Sophia squeezed my hand. "Don't forget, dinner at my place this weekend, okay? I'll cook." I forced a genuine smile this time. Wouldn't miss it for the world. After she left, I spent the evening drafting a new business proposal. I'd scheduled more client calls than usual, a coping mechanism, maybe. My mind stayed busy, which kept the loneliness at bay. As I worked, I caught myself glancing at the empty ring finger where my wedding band once sat. The skin there was pale, a stark reminder. Nothing is the same anymore. That night, lying in bed, I drifted between dozing and fits of anxious half-sleep. My dreams replayed old memories: Charlotte in a white dress, smiling at me, then morphing into the vision of her and Alexander in the bedroom. I woke up gasping, heart hammering, the sheets damp with sweat. "Focus on the present," I told myself. "She's gone. You're free." In the silence, I made a decision. I'd systematically remove every lingering item that reminded me of her. The next morning, I rummaged through closets, packing old mementos into labeled boxes, wedding gifts, photos, knickknacks from shared vacations. I stacked them in the garage, out of sight. It felt like cleaning a wound, painful but necessary. By the end of the day, the house was sparser. The living room walls were nearly bare, and the master bedroom had only the essentials. I stared at the emptiness, a blend of sadness and relief swirling in my gut. This is my space now. No ghosts allowed. In a slow, uncertain way, I sensed a shift in myself. Yes, I was still hurt, still angry at times, but each step away from those shared memories felt like a step toward reclaiming my life. There was no sudden epiphany, no grand wave of relief, just small, steady progress. A spark of hope kindled in my chest, faint but present. As night fell again, I realized I hadn't thought about Alexander's malicious grin or Charlotte's sorrowful eyes for hours. My mind had been occupied with building something new for myself. For the first time in ages, I opened my laptop without checking any news about the scandal. Instead, I researched gym expansions or potential workshops at the dojo, ways to keep my mind and body engaged. It was a subtle shift, but a profound one, acknowledging that I had survived the storm and was still standing. Tomorrow I'd visit the dojo, Maybe schedule a sparring match with one of the advanced students. I was no longer the naive husband caught off guard by betrayal. I was bruised, yes, but not broken. A late-night breeze rattled the windows, reminding me that change was inevitable. Everything in my life had changed, from the way I woke up alone to the way I approached the future. And while the aftershock of betrayal still hummed under my skin, I felt a glimmer of acceptance, like I was finally turning a corner toward something resembling peace. I found myself standing in the kitchen on a drizzly Saturday afternoon, reading the instructions Sophia had texted me. "Dad, pick up fresh basil for the pasta sauce. Don't forget crusty bread." She was hosting a small dinner at her off-campus apartment, determined to show me she was becoming quite the cook. A wave of pride warmed me my daughter was thriving, even though her world had been rattled. I slipped on a jacket and drove to the local market, focusing on picking the best basil leaves, checking tomatoes for ripeness, enjoying the mundane tasks that once might have bored me. Now, they felt grounding. In the produce aisle, I bumped into an acquaintance, Linda, whose daughter had gone to high school with Sophia. She gave me a sympathetic look. "Hey, Ethan, how are you holding up?" Her tone suggested she knew about the scandal. I forced a polite smile. "I'm all right, Linda. Thanks for asking." I kept my voice casual, not wanting to invite more pity. She patted my arm gently and offered a comforting nod before heading off, leaving me with the pungent smell of fresh herbs and the uneasy reminder that people were still talking about me. Once I got to Sophia's apartment, I found her bustling around the small kitchen, stirring a pot of sauce while occasionally checking on some bread in the oven. Naomi West was there too, opening a bottle of sparkling water. Chelsea Davis arrived a few minutes later carrying dessert. The living area was crammed with textbooks, cushions, and the paraphernalia of college life. The air felt warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the quiet emptiness of my own home. As we gathered around the tiny dining table, Sophia insisting I sit at the head, even though it was barely big enough for 4 chairs, I felt a wave of affection for these girls. They'd been unwavering supporters throughout the fiasco. Naomi offered me a bright grin, mentioning she'd started training for a marathon, and I teased her about outrunning me. Chelsea teased me back about how I'd knocked Tyler flat at the pool party months ago, saying, "If you can fight off that jerk, I bet you could run a marathon too." We laughed, though an undercurrent of seriousness lingered. Tyler had triggered so much chaos for us all. Sophia served her homemade pasta, beaming with pride. It was surprisingly tasty, the sauce rich with tomatoes and basil. As we ate, the conversation drifted to lighthearted topics: Naomi's track scholarship, Chelsea's new internship, jokes about campus life. I realized these small, normal moments were precisely what I'd been missing. They felt like rays of sunlight piercing a stormy sky. At one point, Sophia glanced at me with a gentle smile. "Dad, thanks for coming. I know you've got a lot going on." She paused, eyes flickering with concern. "How is everything at home?" I set down my fork, choosing my words carefully. Quieter. "I'm learning to adapt." I didn't want to sink the mood by talking about my empty rooms or the lingering ache when I woke up alone. "I'm focusing on work. It's picking up, so that's good." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "I'm glad. And you know I'm always here, right?" A swell of gratitude filled me, and I nodded, unable to find the right words. That was the moment I understood how deeply I needed her support, how she'd become my anchor in a sea of upheaval. For a split second, I felt guilty. No parent wants to burden their child. But she seemed determined to help me move forward, and that gave me strength. After dinner, we shifted to the cramped living room, sipping coffee. The conversation turned reflective when Chelsea asked, "Mr. Parker, do you ever think you'll want to date again?" Her tone was cautious but curious. I blinked, the question catching me off guard. My mind flashed to the bitterness of Charlotte's betrayal. "I'm not sure," I replied slowly. "Right now I'm focusing on myself, I guess. Healing. Dating feels distant." Naomi nodded. "That makes sense. I guess after everything, it's normal to need time." Sophia looked pensive, fiddling with her mug. "Just remember you deserve happiness, Dad. Eventually." A flicker of warmth touched my chest. "Thanks, kiddo," I murmured. I'll keep that in mind. As the evening wound down, I helped them tidy the kitchen, noticing the easy camaraderie between them. It reminded me of the simpler times I used to have with Charlotte back when life hadn't been tainted by secrets. Shaking off the pang of sadness, I hugged each of them goodbye, stepping out into the chilly air. The drive home felt oddly peaceful. Streetlights glowed on wet pavement, and I let the radio play softly. My conversation with the girls echoed in my head, particularly the notion that I deserved some future happiness. Hard to imagine now, but maybe one day. I pictured my lonely house waiting for me, yet for once I didn't feel a crushing dread. The dinner had buoyed me, reminding me I wasn't entirely alone. That night I decided to do something I'd postponed for weeks: rearrange the living room furniture. I pushed the couch against a different wall, moved the coffee table closer to the window. It wasn't a dramatic transformation, but it shifted the energy of the room, making it feel less stuck in old patterns. By the time I finished, my arms ached, but I felt a small spark of accomplishment. Sinking onto the couch, panting, I surveyed the new layout. The space felt open, the overhead lamp casting warm light on the rug. I could almost imagine hosting new friends here, maybe co-workers or other acquaintances. A new start, I thought, letting a faint smile curve my lips. Over the next few days, I tried to build more positive routines. I found a local volunteer group that cleaned up neighborhood parks on weekends. The first Saturday I joined, I met a retired teacher, Mrs. Elliott, who chatted about her garden and asked me if I'd grown up here. We spent an hour picking up litter, talking about random topics with an ease that felt refreshing. She didn't pry into my personal life or mention the scandal, for which I was grateful. The fresh air and sense of doing something useful gave me a lift I hadn't expected. Meanwhile, at the dojo, I resumed more advanced training. My instructor, a stern but kind man named Marcus, saw the tension in my posture and pushed me to channel it into precise movements. After a particularly intense sparring session, he patted my shoulder, saying, "Keep it balanced, Ethan. Anger can sharpen you, but it can also consume you." I knew he was right. The last thing I wanted was to let bitterness take control. Sophia continued to drop by or invite me over, bridging the gap between our separate lives. Each interaction felt like a reminder that while my marriage was gone, my role as a father remained, stronger than ever. She even coaxed me into trying a new restaurant near her campus, a ramen place with cramped booths and loud conversation. Over steaming bowls of noodles, she confided her worries about an upcoming biology exam. I gave her the best dad advice I could, joking about how at least biology was less messy than relationships. We both laughed, a moment of true connection. At home, every so often a pang of old memories struck. I'd see a stray photo in a drawer or recall a joke Charlotte once told. Instead of sinking into despair, I practiced letting the emotion come and go, like a wave. It's okay to mourn, I reminded myself, but it won't define me. One evening, as I watched a random documentary on TV, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. My heart kicked up, memories of Tyler's old harassment flared, but it turned out to be a new prospective client who'd found my name through a local business newsletter. "I heard you're someone who doesn't back down," she said. A faint grin tugged at my lips as we scheduled a meeting. Life moves on. By the end of that week, a subtle shift had solidified within me. Yes, I felt the remnants of hurt and betrayal, but they no longer controlled my every thought. My daughter's unwavering care, my progress at the dojo, and a renewed sense of purpose in my consulting work gave me small footholds in a new reality. The hush of my house was still there, but it felt less oppressive, more like a canvas waiting to be painted. That Saturday night, I turned off the living room lights and felt a pang of contentment that almost startled me. The longing for what I'd lost wasn't gone, but I'd managed to carve out moments of calm, even hope. In the darkness, I whispered to myself, "I'm going to be okay." Because for the first time since the betrayal, I actually believed it might be true. I never planned on seeing Charlotte so soon after the divorce was finalized, but life has a strange way of forcing encounters. It happened on a Monday evening, just as the sun dipped below the skyline. I'd been in my garage sorting out boxes labeled holiday decorations and misc keepsakes, stuff I hadn't touched in ages. A car engine rumbled outside, and the motion-activated light flicked on. I stepped out, expecting a lost delivery driver or maybe Sophia dropping by without warning. Instead, there was Charlotte standing by her sedan looking smaller than I remembered. She wore a simple sweater, jeans, and an expression that hovered between regret and desperation. For a moment, neither of us spoke. My pulse thudded, anger stirring in my gut. But seeing her like this, hair unkempt, eyes raw, made me realize she wasn't the confident woman I once knew. "What are you doing here?" I finally asked, voice clipped. She swallowed. I should have called first. I just needed to talk to you or see you." She shifted from foot to foot, her gaze flicking to the garage. "I'm not trying to cause trouble, Ethan." My mind spun with conflicting impulses, to slam the door in her face or let her speak. With a weary sigh, I gestured for her to follow me inside the garage. We stopped near a half-empty shelf of paint cans. The overhead bulb buzzed faintly. "What do you want?" I repeated, crossing my arms to maintain distance. She fidgeted with her car keys. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I've been applying for new jobs and references keep coming up. People know about the scandal. It's tough out there." She stared at the concrete floor. "I guess I hoped you could God. It's ridiculous, maybe not speak badly of me if someone calls, or—" She trailed off, voice trembling. My jaw tightened. A part of me wanted to snap. "After everything, you think I'll cover for you?" But another part recognized the precarious spot she was in. I let out a rough breath. "I'm not going to actively sabotage you, Charlotte, but I won't lie either. If a potential employer wants to know what happened, you need to handle that yourself." She nodded quickly, eyes moist. "Of course. I wouldn't ask you to lie. I'm desperate, Ethan. I lost my job, my reputation, everything." She looked up, tears glistening. "I can't even blame you if you hate me." For a few heartbeats, I stared at her. Do I hate her? The word felt too small to encompass the betrayal and heartbreak. "Hate is strong," I finally said. "I'm angry. I'm hurt. But hate? No. That would keep me tied to you in a way I don't want." She blinked, tears escaping. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know I've said it 1,000 times, but I am." I nodded tersely, not wanting to rehash the affair, the final blow to our marriage. "We can't keep doing this, Charlotte. You should move on. Focus on rebuilding your life." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I'm trying. I guess I just needed to see you to see if you're okay." She shook her head. "That sounds insane." "Forget it." Her vulnerability caught me off guard, stirring faint pity beneath my guarded exterior. But pity wouldn't fix anything, and I'd already set boundaries. "I'm fine," I said curtly. "I have my work, Sophia, and the rest of my life to figure out. You should worry about yourself." She gave a shaky nod. "You're right." For a moment, she looked like she wanted to say more, maybe beg for forgiveness. But then she stepped back, wiping her cheeks. "I'll go." As she headed for the driveway, I felt a swirl of old wounds open, but I kept my feet planted, fists clenched. I didn't follow. When her car disappeared down the street, the silence returned, heavier than before. I went back into the house, heart pounding with residual tension. Passing by the hallway mirror, I caught my reflection. My face looked drawn, as if the short conversation had drained me. But a sense of relief also crept in. She'd come, asked for some kind of absolution, and I hadn't caved. I'm not her savior anymore. She has to face her own mess. That night I struggled to sleep. Memories flitted through my mind, the early days of our marriage, when Charlotte was ambitious but sweet, celebrating small milestones in her career. Then images of her from the affair, the heartbreak, the gun in her trembling hands as she tried to stop Alexander from hurting me. So many contradictions. In a restless haze, I found myself rummaging through old photographs in the living room closet. I told myself I was searching for a sense of closure. Instead, I ended up staring at a vacation photo of Charlotte and me laughing in front of the Grand Canyon. My chest tightened. I realized closure wouldn't be found in these pictures. It had to come from inside. The next day, I decided to drive out to a local trail for a long hike, something I hadn't done in ages. I parked near a small clearing, laced up my hiking boots, and started walking. The forest air was damp, leaves shimmering with morning dew. Step by step, my mind cleared. The hush of nature, the crunch of gravel underfoot, it helped me breathe more freely. I'm healing, I told myself. It's just not a straight line. About 2 miles in, I stopped at a rocky overlook. From there, you could see the town spread out below, the distant hum of traffic barely audible. A sense of distance from the scandal, from Charlotte's pain, from my own battered life, offered a moment of calm. I exhaled, letting the tension slip away. A sudden beep from my phone startled me. I glanced at the screen, an email from a local news outlet wanting my exclusive story. My lips curled in distaste. They still wanted to feed off the drama. I deleted it without hesitation, turning off the phone. Enough of that. This moment was mine. When I got home later, my muscles ached from the hike, but it was a pleasant ache reminding me I was alive, pushing forward. In the kitchen, I brewed a strong cup of tea instead of coffee, wanting something soothing. Sipping it, I stood at the patio door, watching an autumn breeze scatter leaves across the backyard. The memory of the fight there resurfaced, but it felt more distant now, like a story I'd read rather than one I lived. 2 days later, word spread that Alexander had left the hospital and quietly relocated to another state, some rumor about seeking specialized therapy. I found myself oddly indifferent. He's out of my life, I thought. That's enough. Media speculation flared up briefly, but it lacked heat. People move on to the next scandal quickly, and I no longer felt tethered to that narrative. Of course, the rumor mill churned occasionally. A neighbor might stop me on my morning run, murmuring, "Heard about Alexander Creed's meltdown," or, "Did you see Charlotte around?" I'd brush them off politely, focusing on my own path. A short time ago, such gossip would have enraged me. Now, it barely registered. Each day, the grip of the past loosened a little more. One evening, I got a text from Charlotte. "I won't bother you again, but thank you for not trying to destroy me. I truly regret everything." I stared at it for a while, emotions stirring. We can't be friends, I thought, but maybe we can coexist from afar. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Time blurred as I shifted to a new normal weekly hikes, consistent hours at the dojo, new clients for my consulting work. Sophia visited on weekends, cooking dinner or just chatting about her studies. A gentle routine formed, cushioning me from the raw edges of the past. Yet occasionally I'd catch a scar on my reflection or a random memory, reminding me that healing was still in process. One day, as I tidied up the house, I found an old crocheted blanket Charlotte's grandmother had made. My gut clenched. I wondered if Charlotte would want it back. After a brief inner debate, I shoved it into a box in the garage. If she needs it, she can ask. Otherwise, I'm done carrying her burdens. That night, with the living room lamps casting soft light, I realized I felt lighter. The wounds were there, but less jagged. My talk with Charlotte in the garage had somehow closed a loop, her apology, my refusal to play savior, all of it. We might never be friends, but I can let go of resentment, because resentment was a chain, and I needed to be free. I closed my eyes, leaning back on the couch, noticing how comfortable the new arrangement felt. In my mind, I said a silent goodbye to the version of Charlotte who'd once lived here, and to the old Ethan who'd believed in illusions of a perfect marriage. A quiet acceptance settled in. I opened my eyes, exhaling slowly. I'm not fully healed, but I'm getting there. One day at a time. The changes came gradually, like watching a sunrise, hardly noticeable at first, until suddenly the light fills everything. In the weeks following my unexpected meeting with Charlotte, I found myself more willing to say yes to new opportunities. I expanded my consulting firm beyond the usual local clients. I signed up for networking events and even considered giving a small workshop on risk management and crisis recovery, something I knew plenty about, professionally and personally. Word about my resilience after the scandal must have spread through the business community. My email inbox filled with invitations to speak at small conferences or to host panel discussions. Initially, I bristled at the idea of exposing myself to more public scrutiny, but then I realized I'm not that same guy living in fear of gossip, so I said yes to a few. Baby steps, I told myself. In the midst of this, Sophia called me one morning, excitement buzzing through the phone. "Dad, I got an internship with the county hospital. It's not paid, but it's exactly the experience I need for my major." Her voice radiated pride, and my chest swelled with fatherly joy. We talked about her schedule, how it might impact her visits home, and I assured her I could handle the quiet spells. That weekend, I decided to host a small backyard barbecue, a test of sorts, to see if I could reclaim the space. I invited Michael Davis, my attorney friend who'd guided me through the divorce, plus a couple of friendly neighbors I trusted. I even invited Naomi and Chelsea, who were around for a brief break from college. Sophia arrived too, wearing a broad grin and carrying fresh vegetables. Standing at the grill, flipping burgers and chicken, I felt a mild déjà vu from the ill-fated pool party months ago, but the tension was gone. Instead of Tyler Creed barging in with aggression, I had Michael telling jokes about a particularly hilarious case he'd handled. Naomi teased me about my poor marinade technique, insisting she could do better. Everyone lounged around the yard, sipping lemonade, laughing, relishing the mild weather. The atmosphere was calm, normal. At one point, Michael pulled me aside, handing me a cold drink. "You look good, Ethan," he remarked, scanning my face. "I mean it. Less weighed down." I shrugged with a small smile. "Thanks. I guess I'm learning to let the past be the past." He nodded approvingly. "That's the best move." Then he tapped my shoulder. "Oh, I almost forgot there's a big industry conference next month downtown. I'm speaking on a panel about legal issues and corporate disputes. You might be interested. Potential clients will be there." I considered it, a spark of curiosity stirring. "Send me the details, I'll check it out." Even a few weeks prior, I might have avoided crowds. But now, stepping out didn't seem as daunting. As the barbecue wound down, I found myself sitting on a lawn chair, the grill's smoke lingering in the air. Naomi said her goodbyes, hugging me quickly and winking about future weekend meetups. Chelsea did the same, reminding me to visit campus more often. Michael promised we'd grab coffee soon. Eventually, it was just me and Sophia, collecting plates and cups from the yard. Sophia paused by the old oak tree in the corner, looking up at the branches. "Remember when I was little and you tried to build me a treehouse here?" she asked with a wistful grin. "It never got past a platform." I chuckled. "I recall. I hammered a bunch of nails, then realized I had no idea how to build walls. You ended up just using it as a lookout." She laughed softly. "Those were good times." Then her expression grew thoughtful. "Are you content, Dad?" I thought about it. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the loneliness, they all still existed in some corner of my mind. But I also felt an undeniable sense of calm, a readiness to move forward. "I'm not sure if content is the right word," I said, setting down the stack of plates. "But I'm getting there. I feel like I can breathe again." She nodded, giving me a one-armed hug. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, and that simple statement felt like a burst of sunshine in my chest. Over the following days, I dove deeper into building my consulting firm's presence. I updated my website, polished my LinkedIn profile, and even posted a couple of articles about handling business crises. The responses were positive, encouraging. A local entrepreneurial group invited me to speak at one of their monthly meetups. My nerves flared at the idea of public speaking, but a new confidence pushed me to accept. "I can do this," I told myself. Between client calls and the dojo sessions, my schedule filled up. Each punch or roundhouse kick in training reminded me of my own strength, a strength I'd underestimated for too long. Some of my old dojo friends started to notice the change in my demeanor. Marcus, my instructor, pulled me aside after class one evening. "Ethan, you're fighting with clarity, not just rage. Keep it up." I left the dojo that night drenched in sweat but smiling, a deep satisfaction humming through me. I still had those sleepless nights where a stray memory of Charlotte intruded, or the mental replay of her and Alexander. But the difference was, I didn't let it devour me. I'd learned to say, "Not today," ghost from the past, and shift my focus to the present. One afternoon, out of the blue, I got a call from a prominent local developer, Miss Delgado, who wanted to hire me to streamline her construction supply chain. It was a lucrative opportunity, the kind that could elevate my business significantly. We met at a sleek downtown cafe. Over cappuccinos, she peppered me with questions about my experience, referencing a glowing recommendation from one of her associates. "I hear you handle adversity well," she said, a hint of a smile in her eyes. "That's a big part of why I'm interested. My projects are high stress, often behind schedule. I need someone unflappable." My stomach clenched with a flicker of memory, Unflappable wasn't exactly how I'd felt during the scandal. But maybe to the outside world, standing up to a wealthy executive in my own yard was a sign of resilience. "I can handle stress," I said quietly. "Give me a chance to prove it." She agreed, and we shook hands on the preliminary details. As I left the cafe, I felt a surge of pride. This is what rebuilding looks like, I realized. No more cowering from opportunities because of fear or embarrassment. Back home that evening, I took a moment to stand in my newly arranged living room, a gentle lamp glowing beside the couch. The house smelled faintly of the chili I'd cooked earlier, a cozy scent that made the space feel inviting rather than lonely. A small stack of business proposals sat on my coffee table, New Horizons. Life was far from perfect, but I'd come a long way from the shattered man who'd discovered his wife's affair. I still had no intention of dating, but the idea no longer felt utterly impossible. Sometimes I caught myself imagining a conversation with someone new, maybe at an industry event or while volunteering at the park cleanup. I had no illusions about forging an instant romance, but the fact I could even consider it proved how far I'd climbed out of the darkness. Standing there, I allowed myself a small grin. I'm starting over, I thought. This time on my own terms. The betrayal remained a scar, a reminder that life could twist unexpectedly. But scars also meant survival, and with each passing day, I felt the faint spark of renewal grow stronger. Outside, the evening air rustled through the trees, carrying the distant hum of passing cars. I finished tidying up and headed upstairs. The bedroom felt peaceful, white sheets on a new mattress, no ghosts lurking in the corners. I knew tomorrow might bring fresh challenges or an echo of old pain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face whatever came next, my spirit buoyed by the knowledge that I was forging a path beyond betrayal toward a future of my own making. I'd gotten used to my house's silence, how every morning there was no sign of another pair of slippers or a second coffee mug drying on the rack. It no longer unnerved me the way it once did. I suppose I'd learned to fill the silence with new habits. Some nights I researched yoga or mindfulness routines, anything to keep my mind calm. Other nights I wrote down business strategies for my consulting firm, scribbling notes until midnight. It was a slow transformation, but I could sense a growing sense of direction. A few weeks after the barbecue that marked the start of my new normal, I received an unexpected phone call. The ring startled me from a half-doze. I'd been sprawled on the couch, a baseball game murmuring on low volume. I rubbed my eyes and glanced at the screen. Flight Corp Holdings. I recalled them vaguely, an aerospace manufacturer I'd exchanged emails with months ago, back before everything spiraled out of control. Curiosity piqued, I answered in a measured tone. "This is Ethan Parker." A crisp female voice replied, "Hello, Mr. Parker. I'm Janine Moriarty from Flight Corp. We're finalizing a major contract in California and need an outside consultant to reorganize our supply chain. I understand you have experience in that area." A flicker of excitement warmed my chest. "Yes, I do." Her voice carried an undercurrent of hurry, as though she was juggling multiple tasks. "We'd like you on site at our facility in San Diego. It might take several weeks. Could you travel soon?" I almost laughed once. I might have hesitated, but now there was nothing holding me back from traveling. No spouse to consult or old wounds to hide from. "I can make that work," I said, leaning forward, adrenaline stirring. By the time we ended the call, I'd agreed to a multi-phase contract. They'd fly me out next week, cover my lodging, and pay a consulting fee generous enough to make my heart skip. Setting down the phone, I exhaled. It's really happening. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. I updated my project proposals, reorganized my documents, and pored over Flight Corp's initial data. My mind brimmed with ideas for optimizing their supply chain. I felt that old spark of passion for problem-solving, a sense that I was good at this, maybe better than I'd ever been. The tension and heartbreak of the past months had, in a strange way, sharpened my focus. One evening, I stood in my bedroom packing a suitcase. In the old days, Charlotte might have been at my side, double-checking if I had my laptop charger or reminding me to bring a spare tie. Now it was just me, humming softly as I placed clothes in neat folds. I could have felt lonely about it, but something within me recognized the freedom too, a chance to do this on my own terms. Before I left, I made sure to call Sophia. She'd started her hospital internship and her schedule was hectic, but we still carved out pockets of time to talk. "Dad, I'm so happy for you," she said, voice brimming with excitement. "It's a big deal, right? Flight Corp's a major name." "It is," I agreed. "I'll be gone a few weeks, maybe more, but I'll keep in touch." She paused. "Just remember to take breaks. Don't bury yourself in work to avoid everything else." I managed a small laugh. "I won't. I'm doing better, Sophia. Truly. But thanks for the reminder." That night, I stared at my half-packed bag, feeling a swirl of nerves. A lingering thought crept in. Would traveling reopen old wounds? After all, I used to watch Charlotte jet off to conferences, never suspecting her betrayal. But I pushed that aside. This trip was mine, my chance to reclaim the sense of purpose I once had before everything unraveled. The day of departure arrived with a crisp morning sky. My flight was at noon, so I drove to the airport, marveling at how different it felt from the last time I'd traveled. Then I'd hidden suspicion behind a forced smile. Now I carried no illusions. I was simply ready to embrace a fresh chapter. Security was a blur of lines and the beep of scanners. Once at the gate, I found a seat overlooking the tarmac, sipped a coffee, and let my thoughts wander. I'm not just surviving anymore, I told myself, the realization settling in my bones. I'm making choices. The flight itself was uneventful, hours of stale air and occasional turbulence. I found myself drifting in and out of a light nap, head against the window. Images of my old life flashed through my mind. The house that had once felt crowded with memories. The backyard where so much went wrong. But each time, the memory felt distant, as if it belonged to another lifetime. I'm healing, I reaffirmed in my thoughts. When we touched down in San Diego, a wave of ocean-scented air greeted me outside the terminal. I grabbed a taxi to the hotel Flight Corp had reserved, checking in with a sense of mild wonder. The room was plush king-size bed, a balcony with a glimpse of the bay. I set my suitcase down, absorbing the hush. After a moment, I stepped out onto the balcony, letting the sun brush my face. Boats bobbed in the harbor, and gulls drifted overhead. Something in my chest eased, a quiet thrill at being here on my own terms. The next morning, I headed to Flight Corp's local facility, a sleek building near the water. A brisk security guard let me in, and soon I met Janine Moriarty in person. She was tall, sharp-eyed, and radiated efficiency. "Welcome, Mr. Parker," she said, leading me through a labyrinth of corridors. "We need your expertise immediately. Our entire supply chain for the new turbine project is behind schedule, and internal teams can't fix it." I spent the rest of the day buried in spreadsheets, meeting department heads and scribbling notes on a whiteboard. The tension in the air was palpable: missed deadlines, tight budgets, anxious managers. Yet I found a certain calm in the chaos. My mind danced with solutions, reorganizing production timelines, negotiating new vendor contracts, mapping out distribution strategies. This is what I love doing, I realized, finding order in the mess. Evenings were mine to explore. On my second night, I wandered the downtown waterfront, sampling fish tacos from a street vendor, letting the city's bustle envelop me. The briny breeze and neon-lit skyline felt almost dreamlike. I caught myself smiling at nothing, an unguarded contentment pulsing in my veins. I'm free to be who I am now, I thought. Each day at Flight Corp brought new challenges, unexpected shipping delays, outdated software, staff turnover. I tackled them head-on, forging a rapport with engineers and procurement officers. Janine seemed impressed, occasionally pulling me aside to remark, "Your composure is remarkable, Ethan. Did you serve in the military or something?" I'd just laugh quietly. No, I'd think. I survived something else entirely, but I didn't elaborate. The specifics of my personal battles stayed locked away. Midway through the second week, the department leads called a meeting to assess progress. We gathered in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the bay. As I presented my findings, new supply routes, cost-saving measures, the tension in the room lifted, replaced by cautious optimism. People fired questions, and I answered with steady confidence, unshaken by the pressure. I've been under far greater stress, I reminded myself. After that meeting, Janine caught me in the hallway. "If this goes well, corporate might want you at another facility after this," she said. "We have a site in Seattle facing similar issues. Interested? A spark flickered in my chest. Potentially, I replied, not wanting to appear too eager. Let's get this location sorted first. She nodded, but I sensed her approval. A swirl of possibility danced in my mind. Maybe I could travel more, sign bigger contracts, keep growing my firm. The old fear of leaving home had vanished. Home was no longer a place I clung to out of desperation. The house was mine, yes, but it wasn't my prison. Each evening, I'd return to the hotel with a pleasant weariness, sometimes calling Sophia to update her. She'd gush about her internship. I'd talk about supply chain drama, and we'd laugh at how mundane and grown-up our conversations sounded. "I'm proud of you," she'd often say before hanging up, and each time the words warmed me more than I expected. Late one night, after a particularly intense day at Flight Corp, I stepped onto the balcony with a cup of chamomile tea. City lights glimmered below, and the harbor's reflection shimmered. A gentle breeze carried faint honks from distant ships. Leaning on the rail, I closed my eyes, letting that sense of calm wash over me. I made it through everything, I thought. And now I'm here, truly here, present in my own life. A memory surfaced unbidden, Charlotte calling me her safe place back when we first married. It stung briefly, but instead of dwelling on the pain, I exhaled it away. She was gone from my life, by her own choices and mine. I had found a strength that didn't rely on her or anyone else. I watched the distant lights twinkle, feeling a deep resolve fill my chest. Tomorrow I'd refine more schedules, maybe set up a vendor negotiation. I'd continue forging new alliances at Flight Corp, possibly planning future expansions for my consulting business. And in a few days I'd return home, check on the house, see Sophia. This is who I am now, I realized, a quiet smile forming, a man rediscovering his purpose, unburdened by shame or regret. And as the nighttime breeze cooled my skin, I felt certain that the darkest chapters of betrayal were behind me, replaced by a horizon of possibilities I was finally ready to embrace. I flew back home from San Diego with a surge of triumph thrumming in my veins. The project at Flight Corp had gone better than I'd hoped. Janine Moriarty's final words as she dropped me at the airport rang in my ears. "Corporate is impressed with your adaptability. Expect some calls soon, Ethan." As the plane touched down and I navigated through baggage claim, an odd mix of relief and curiosity flooded me. Relief to be home, to see my daughter and step back into the house that was finally starting to feel comfortable again. Curiosity about what Janine's comment might mean for my business. Could I handle more traveling, more expansions? The thought excited me more than it scared me. A couple of days later, while I was reorganizing my home office, the phone rang. This time, the caller ID read Benton and Smythe Consulting Group. My eyebrows shot up. Benton and Smythe was a large, reputable consulting firm that operated nationwide, way bigger than my small operation. I answered with cautious politeness. A smooth male voice introduced himself. "Hello, Mr. Parker. My name is James Willard. I'm a director at Benton and Smythe. We recently heard about your outstanding work at Flight Corp. I'd like to discuss a potential collaboration or partnership." My pulse quickened. "Partnership?" He chuckled lightly. "Yes. We're exploring a model where we bring independent consultants onto major projects. The pay is excellent, and you'd have full access to our network of high-profile clients, Fortune 500, government contracts, that kind of scale." I leaned back in my chair, thoughts racing. This could catapult me into a completely different league. But a flicker of caution nagged at me. I just found stability. Do I risk losing my autonomy? Willard explained the basics. I could remain independent, but Benton and Smythe would contract me for large assignments, providing resources and teams. I'd get a significant cut of each project's fees. "We'd love to bring you on board, especially given your recent success. And, well, word has it you can handle intense situations." I knew what that oblique reference meant. My name had circulated after the scandal with Alexander Creed. At least it's opening doors, I thought with a wry smile. Telling Willard I needed time to consider, I hung up with a knot of excitement in my stomach. That evening I invited Sophia to dinner at a local bistro. It was a cozy spot with brick walls, dim lighting, and jazz music drifting through hidden speakers. Over plates of pasta, I recounted Willard's call. Sophia beamed, swirling her fork. "That's amazing, Dad. This is exactly what you've been building up to, right?" I sipped my iced tea, torn between excitement and hesitation. It is, but part of me wonders if teaming up with a big firm might overshadow my own identity. She shrugged. Or maybe it amplifies your reach. You always said you wanted to grow. She paused, giving me a warm look. You're allowed to seize opportunities now. You're not stuck. I thought about those words. You're not stuck. Once, my loyalty to a failing marriage had tethered me, but that was over. I guess you're right, I murmured, swirling my tea. The conversation drifted to her internship, and as she described an overnight shift tending to patients, I felt a proud warmth. My daughter was forging her own path. Maybe I could do the same. Back home, I paced around the living room, memories of the old drama fleeting like distant echoes. The new furniture arrangement gave the place an airy feel. I picked up the phone and called Michael Davis for advice. He was more than an attorney. He'd become a friend, someone whose judgment I respected. Michael listened carefully as I explained Benton and Smythe's proposition. This is huge, Ethan, he said, but do your due diligence. Understand the contract, the fee splits, any non-compete clauses. Don't jump in blindly. His caution made sense. I jotted notes, promising to forward him any draft agreements. Thanks, Michael, I said, feeling lighter. I'll keep you posted. A few days later, Benton and Smythe's official offer arrived by email. I spent hours dissecting the details. It boiled down to a flexible partnership. I could take or decline assignments, use their branding if I wanted, and in return, they'd supply me with high-value clients. The profit share was more than fair, especially for someone with my smaller operation. Still, an undercurrent of uncertainty nagged me. What if I lose my personal touch? But another voice countered, you can do more good, help more companies, and make a name for yourself. I recalled how energized I'd felt in San Diego. Maybe it's time I step out of the shadows. Sophia came by on a Saturday, helping me wash windows, one of those chores I'd long neglected. As we scrubbed grime off the glass, she asked again about the Benton and Smythe deal. I told her I was leaning toward yes. She flashed an encouraging grin. Dad, you didn't survive all that heartbreak just to play small. Her words struck me, echoing in my mind. Maybe you're right, I said quietly, lowering my sponge. I guess I'm just afraid to make the wrong move, but maybe not moving is the bigger mistake. She nodded, water dripping off her gloves. Exactly. Sometimes you have to take a chance. You taught me that when I was little. Remember, I was scared to try out for the soccer team, but you said doing nothing was a guarantee of failure? I couldn't help but laugh. I did say that, didn't I? Her eyes shone. You did. So do it. The worst case is you try it and decide it's not for you. Later that night, after tucking away the cleaning supplies, I sat on the couch in the dim light. My laptop glowed with the Benton and Smythe contract, cursor blinking at the signature line. Every cell of my body buzzed with anticipation. I've come a long way, I reminded myself. Time to own it. I signed. Then I emailed Willard, attaching the scanned document. My heart pounded, a rush of adrenaline flooding me. This was more than a business deal. It was a statement that I refused to let betrayal define me. The next morning, Willard called, voice brimming with enthusiasm. Welcome aboard, Ethan. We've got a major project lined up with a Fortune 500 retailer. We'd like you to lead a supply chain overhaul. Are you ready? My response slipped out effortlessly. Absolutely. A sense of possibility expanded in my chest, like I was finally exhaling months of held breath. That day, I reorganized my home office, clearing out old files and rearranging everything with fresh purpose. In a final symbolic gesture, I even replaced the battered corkboard on the wall with a sleek whiteboard, scribbling New Beginnings at the top in bold marker. Work ramped up fast. Benton and Smythe introduced me to their team leads, a diverse group of analysts, logistics experts, and strategists. We had conference calls nearly every day, discussing approaches, assigning tasks. Despite the heavy workload, I felt invigorated. Each new challenge reminded me of how far I'd come since the dark days of heartbreak. During one of these sessions, Willard casually mentioned, "You'll need to attend a corporate summit next month in Chicago to meet the client's leadership. Think you can handle it?" A slow grin spread across my face. "I can handle it," I said. "This is my life now, travel, growth, forging a bigger path." That night, I celebrated alone in the backyard, sipping a glass of soda under the stars. The faint memory of that brutal fight with Alexander surfaced, but it no longer made me flinch. The yard had changed freshly mowed grass, new landscaping in the corners. I'd reclaimed it, just as I'd reclaimed my sense of worth. Looking up at the night sky, I realized I was no longer the man haunted by betrayal. I was a father, a consultant, a man with a future that stretched out like a road free of debris. Yes, scars remained, but they served as reminders of survival, not as anchors chaining me to the past. With the partnership sealed and major projects looming, I felt an unexpected thrill in my bones, like I was on the brink of something big, something that would redefine me yet again. And this time, I welcomed the transformation with open arms. I'll admit, I hadn't seriously considered dating again. After all the dust settled my marriage's collapse, the public scandal, the divorce, I assumed I'd live a quiet, single life for a long while. But fate had a way of steering me into corners I never saw coming. It began with a corporate gala Benton and Smythe asked me to attend. They were sponsoring a charity dinner for a nonprofit that funded scholarships for underprivileged students. "It'll be good PR," Willard told me, half joking. "Also a chance to network with potential clients." I was uneasy. Gala meant formal attire, small talk with wealthy strangers, and a swirl of events I'd once navigated alongside Charlotte. But that was another lifetime, I reminded myself. I can handle this alone. So, on a crisp Friday evening, I found myself walking into the grand ballroom of a downtown hotel, wearing a navy suit I'd bought specifically for the event. The space glowed with chandeliers, and a hum of polite conversation buzzed over the clink of glasses. My heart thumped in my chest, but I forced my shoulders to relax. Willard spotted me, waving from across the room. "Ethan, there you are!" He introduced me to several colleagues, each with firm handshakes and inquisitive smiles. I did my best to project quiet confidence, chatting about supply chain management or the scholarship cause. At some point, I drifted toward the buffet, a little overwhelmed by the crowd. That's when I first noticed her standing near a display of fresh fruit, studying a plate of strawberries like she was evaluating a rare artifact. She was tall, with a simple black dress and a soft, open expression. Our eyes briefly met, and she smiled politely, turning back to the fruit. I wasn't the type to approach random strangers at events, but something about her mild curiosity with the food struck me as genuine. I cleared my throat. "They, look good tonight, don't they?" I said, gesturing at the strawberries. "Lame opening," my mind scolded, but she turned with a small smile. "They do," she agreed, picking one up. "I'm always cautious with Buffett strawberries, though. Sometimes they're underripe and disappointing." I managed a light chuckle. "That's a unique concern. Maybe try one first?" She did, taking a small bite. Her grin widened. "It's perfect. Lucky me." For a moment, we just looked at each other amid the bustling crowd. I introduced myself. "I'm Ethan Parker, by the way, consultant with Benton and Smythe." Her eyes flickered with recognition. "I thought I recognized you from the sponsors table. I'm Catherine Vaughn, or Cat, as most people call me." Her handshake was warm, self-assured. She explained she was a senior fundraiser for the scholarship nonprofit. She'd helped organize the evening's gala, and it had turned out better than she expected. "I usually handle smaller fundraisers, but they wanted me to coordinate this big event," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I've been running around like crazy all night." I admired her composure, the faint glow of excitement in her eyes. "Well, from what I can see, it's a success. You should relax a bit." She exhaled, a hint of relief crossing her face. "Maybe I can now that the main program's over." We ended up sampling a few more strawberries, chatting about the nonprofit's mission, how they identified talented students in underfunded districts, providing them with mentorships and college funds. Her passion radiated with every word, reminding me of how I felt when I dove into a complex supply chain problem. It felt refreshing to meet someone who cared deeply about their work. Time slipped by, and soon we realized we'd monopolized the buffet corner, laughter mingling with the soft jazz overhead. At some point, I caught a glimpse of Willard raising an eyebrow at me from across the room, a mischievous grin on his face. He mouthed something like, "Carry on," and I rolled my eyes, stifling a chuckle. Catherine suggested we step onto the adjacent terrace for some fresh air. The night sky glowed with city lights, and a subtle breeze cooled the warmth of the ballroom. We found a quiet corner near a potted plant. I couldn't recall the last time I felt so at ease with a stranger. "So, Ethan," she began, resting her elbows on the terrace's ledge, "tell me something interesting about your life outside of work, something not on your business card." I hesitated, my thoughts churning. Should I mention the fiasco with my ex? The scandal? That hardly seemed like first conversation material. Instead, I shrugged lightly. "I practice martial arts. It helps me clear my head." Her eyes lit up. "Really? Like karate?" "More like a mix, some jujitsu, some self-defense techniques. It's been a way to stay balanced." She nodded with genuine curiosity. "That's impressive. I've always wanted to learn, but I never found the time." "Making time is the first step," I said, feeling the truth of my own words. We stood there for a few moments, silence laced with the city's distant pulse. My gaze flicked over the elegant lines of her face, the gentle determination in her posture. Before I realized I was doing it, I said, "Do you want to grab coffee sometime, away from the gala chaos?" A flicker of surprise crossed her features, quickly replaced by a small, warm smile. "I'd like that," she said softly. My heart did an odd little leap. I hadn't expected to ask. Her answer seemed to set something in motion, a subtle shift in the air. We exchanged numbers, parted ways when the gala's program demanded her attention again. When I got home that night, I found myself grinning like a fool in the mirror, albeit with a dose of uneasy thrill. Am I really doing this? The next day I tried to bury myself in work to avoid overthinking, but each time my phone chimed, I secretly hoped it might be her. Late afternoon I got a text. "Coffee tomorrow? Cat." A jolt of excitement coursed through me. I'm stepping into something new, I thought, a tremor of both fear and anticipation. We met at a small cafe in the Arts District, a place with mismatched furniture and chalkboard menus. As we sat sipping lattes, conversation flowed easily, her stories from traveling to rural communities for nonprofit outreach, my anecdotes about corporate negotiations. She asked gentle questions about my personal history, but never pried. Something in her manner put me at ease, made me want to share, though I glossed over the uglier parts of my past, not because I wanted to hide them, but because the moment felt too fresh to delve into heartbreak. Catherine, or Kat, as she preferred, listened intently, eyes warm with understanding. She confided how she'd left a high-paying corporate gig to follow her passion in fundraising, sometimes facing skepticism from family or friends. "People called me crazy," she laughed softly, "but I needed work that meant something." I admired her resolve. It resonated with my own journey, where I'd clung to a sense of integrity amid chaos. When the barista announced closing time, we realized with mild surprise how late it was. I walked her to her car, a battered sedan that seemed at odds with her poised demeanor. Before she climbed in, we paused, the night air swirling around us. "Thank you for tonight," she said, her voice quiet. I didn't expect to meet someone interesting at that gala. A soft laugh escaped me. "Me neither." She hesitated as if gauging my reaction, then leaned forward and kissed my cheek, a light, warm press of lips. I stood there, momentarily stunned, 1,000 emotions flickering. Relief, apprehension, a flicker of hope. "Good night, Ethan," she murmured, sliding into the driver's seat. My voice felt thick. "Good night, Kat." As her taillights disappeared into the dark, I stood rooted, heart thrumming. It wasn't the adrenaline of a fight, nor the anxious energy of heartbreak. It was possibility, pure and simple, stirring in my chest. "Am I ready for this?" a small voice asked, but a stronger voice replied, "You deserve to find out." On the drive home, I realized how deeply the past had shaped me. My trust had been shattered by Charlotte's betrayal, my self-esteem battered. Yet here I was, stepping cautiously toward something new. A second chance at companionship? Maybe. There was no guarantee it would lead anywhere, but the fear I once felt about reopening my heart had dimmed, replaced by a gentle curiosity. After so many slow-motion days of healing, I sensed I was tiptoeing into a new realm. Not because I needed someone to fix me, but because I was finally strong enough to risk the unknown. And as I turned onto my street, I caught myself smiling, a flutter of excitement pulsing in time with my racing heart. The weeks that followed felt like a delicate dance working tirelessly on Benton and Smythe projects, checking in with Sophia, and weaving sporadic but meaningful moments with Catherine. We kept it simple at first. Dinner after her fundraising events, a Sunday brunch squeezed between my consulting calls. Each time we met, we talked about anything and everything: her passion for helping marginalized youths, my journey through heartbreak and self-discovery, sketching the details but never dwelling in the pain. One day, Catherine asked about my house. We'd been strolling through the local botanical gardens, the sun filtering through palm fronds, dust motes swirling in the beams. She mentioned how she lived in a cramped apartment, how sometimes she wished she had a yard to grow flowers. I swallowed a lump in my throat, thinking about my backyard, where so much changed. Instead of avoiding it, I offered quietly, "If you ever want to see my yard, you're welcome. I've been doing some landscaping." It felt like an invitation to a deeper part of me, a place once stained by violence, but now reclaimed. She smiled, lacing her fingers through mine. "I'd like that." So a few nights later, we ended up in my living room, the windows open to let in a mild evening breeze. I showed her the newly planted rose bushes outside, the subtle lighting I'd installed to make the yard more welcoming. She admired my efforts with genuine warmth, brushing her fingers over a blooming bud. Over iced tea, she finally asked, "Is this the backyard where?" She trailed off, not finishing the sentence. My heart clenched. I recognized the look in her eyes: concern, gentle curiosity. I nodded. "Yes, a lot happened here, but I've tried to move forward. It's not the same yard it used to be." Catherine squeezed my hand. She didn't pry further, didn't ask for details, just stood with me, letting the hush settle, as if acknowledging the scars without needing to see them up close. In that silence, I felt a quiet acceptance envelop me. For the first time, I realized I could share my vulnerabilities without fear of judgment. In the following weeks, my professional life soared. Benton and Smythe assigned me a new corporate client, which involved a short trip to Chicago for crucial negotiations. I found myself standing in sleek boardrooms, presenting streamlined proposals, receiving nods of approval from top executives. My phone buzzed with new inquiries daily, a testament to how far I'd come. During that Chicago visit, I paused in front of a reflective skyscraper, gazing at my mirrored image. I saw a man in a tailored suit, expression firm yet calm, a far cry from the battered husband who once doubted his every move. I've chosen this path, I thought with determination, and I'm not looking back. When I returned home, I discovered a voicemail from Catherine. "Call me when you can. No rush, just miss you." My chest tightened with warmth. Once I might have panicked at the idea of closeness. Now I found myself eager to dial her back. We met for dinner at a cozy Italian place, and I brought Sophia along. It wasn't exactly a formal introduction, but I sensed Catherine wanted to know the most important person in my life. Sophia was cautious at first, scanning Catherine with curious eyes, but by the end of the meal, they were chatting about volunteer programs and hospital issues. Watching them bond, I felt an almost surreal gratitude, my two worlds converging gently. Later, as we dropped Sophia at her car, she whispered to me, "I like her, Dad. She's genuine." My heart fluttered with relief. I want them both to be part of my life, I realized with clarity, but only if it's right. Catherine and I continued our slow dance of discovery, neither of us pushing for more than we were ready to give. She once confided she'd been in a long engagement that fell apart due to differing life goals. "I'd sworn off serious relationships," she said with a wry laugh, swirling her coffee mug in my kitchen. "Then I met you, and well, I'm rethinking a few things." I touched her hand gently. "Me too," I murmured, a flood of emotion washing over me. One evening, I found myself standing with her in the backyard under a canopy of stars, reminiscent of the night I once stood there alone, brimming with anger. Now I felt a quiet acceptance, a sense that I'd reclaimed the space. Catherine gazed up at the twinkling sky, leaning her head on my shoulder. I wrapped an arm around her, inhaling the soft scent of her shampoo. We didn't speak for a long time. The hush of the night spoke volumes, crickets chirping a lullaby of renewal. I have a choice, I thought, to open my heart again. The next morning I woke early, mind spinning with the idea of selling the house. A fleeting thought that had emerged over the months, partly because the place still held painful echoes. But as I padded downstairs barefoot, I realized I'd grown attached to the new life I'd forged here. It no longer felt haunted, it felt like mine. The house is just bricks, I reminded myself. The real home is in me, in how I choose to live. In the weeks that followed, I fine-tuned my schedule between Benton and Smythe obligations and personal time. Sophia teased me about my globe-trotting expansions, but she also cheered me on. Catherine occasionally joined me at the dojo, humorously attempting some martial arts moves. She wasn't half bad. One late afternoon, I found myself strolling the backyard alone, the sun a deep orange disk in the sky. My gaze fell on the patch of grass where I'd once fought so fiercely. The memory flickered the adrenaline, the betrayal, but it felt like a distant echo. I'm free, I thought, exhaling. Just then, my phone buzzed Catherine, sending a quick text. Dinner later? My treat. A gentle warmth spread through me. Yes, I texted back simply. Then, almost on a whim, I stepped to the corner of the yard, where I'd planted rose bushes after Charlotte moved out. Their blossoms swayed in the evening breeze, vibrant red petals glistening. Without hesitation, I picked a small bloom, inhaling its sweet scent. A symbol of new beginnings, I mused, carefully tucking the blossom into my shirt's breast pocket. A memory rushed in, Charlotte's words from years ago about how she'd tend a garden of love in our marriage. That garden had withered, but I realized I could cultivate a new one shaped by honesty and mutual respect, not illusions. I'm not the same man who let illusions blind me, I told myself. I've chosen a life built on truth, no matter how messy it gets. The sun slipped behind the fence, painting the sky with purple and gold. In that gentle twilight, I felt acceptance bloom within me. I forgave the past, not for anyone else's sake, but for my own. I felt the bruises, both physical and emotional, fade to scars that reminded me of my strength. Stepping back into the house, I placed the rose in a small glass of water, a quiet reminder of what I'd reclaimed. The final pages of one story had given way to the opening chapters of another. And as I reached for my keys, ready to see Catherine again, I understood that none of it was guaranteed. But that was the beauty of it. Life was a choice, every day, every breath. I flicked off the lights, locking the door behind me. The summer air enveloped me as I walked to my car. I'm living a life I've chosen, I thought, not one forced on me by betrayal or fear. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, certain that whatever lay ahead, success, heartbreak, or something in between, I was strong enough to face it. Because this time, my future was rooted in resilience and the quiet, unwavering conviction that I deserved this new beginning.